Okay, we are live, April 29th, 2025, and I'll be opening up phones here momentarily. We were testing it out a minute ago, and apparently the YouTube stream didn't pick up, but now we're here. And so, it's COVID Cooties you're hearing in the background by Symbia. One of the best things to come out of 2020. Nearly as infectious as a bowl of underheated bat soup. Great track. I put a link in the chat below if you want to go ahead and join. You can join by StreamYards, or you can call in the traditional way. Whatever works for you. So let's see. Let's get started on myminds.com. I'm not going to reiterate too much about the legal wars, the lawfare on flat Earth, but it looks like it's going to be interesting. And we have a few new developments regarding what appears to be a pastor. He's a pastor, right? Priest Duffy, William Duffy. Not really a fan of flat earthers. He went from just trying to debunk their model to now he's a full-blown anti. And he's calling out David Weiss in a very, I think, pointed way, specifically with regard to Weiss's offer of 2 Bitcoins for proof of a spinning ball Earth. Well, the trip to Antarctica, the 24-hour sun, should be enough to cash in on the Bitcoins. My question is, why is the leading flat Earth proponent with the Flat Earth Map app not going to Antarctica himself? If you have enough money to buy a couple of Bitcoins, you can go to Antarctica. So if anything, he ought to just give it to Duffy. Hey, you did us a favor. Let me go ahead and comp you that trip. But instead, he and others have gone into the, I guess, the very culty, predictable response of attacking and demonizing those who left the cult. And there is a cultish nature to a lot of this stuff, a lot of these subgroups. But the charges have been things from these people only went to Antarctica because they were given cars, they were given houses. But one of the claims is that Paul and the Plane, Robbie Davidson, and Patty Steer committed some kind of SEC violation with the Axion cryptocurrency. And in order to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, they converted to the globe. They made a deal. I mean, that's ludicrous. You commit a significant crime, they're not going to make a deal with you to change your opinion on the shape of the Earth. Doesn't make any sense, but that's what they said. And as a result of this, Steer, Davidson, and Paul and the Ball actually sent legal threats. And Mark Sargent said he invited it. He's like, bring it on, basically. Mark Sargent said he's not worried if they try to throw him in jail, which, again, they can't really throw you in jail over a civil suit over defamation. They may want to, but they can't. Now, I was going over these various aspects of it, but mostly I'm interested in seeing what happens with the Bitcoin thing. Like, is that a legally binding offer? If you spend several years telling people, if you do this, I'll give you this money, and then somebody goes with prize money and he refuses it, I don't know. I think there's some kind of violation there. Maybe he'll have to make a deal and he'll convert to a ball earther. Joined by Lesko, Roxy, Truman, Diana Southard. A Bitcoin is 95K. Went down a bit. Truman B3000 says a UFC fight between Fed and Duffy would be great. Yeah, well, there's this strange thing here. It's a schism. Like, they can't all be shills and agents. Like, Mark Sargent's an outlier. He's the only one still clinging to the flat Earth model. But his out here is that he believes that we're in a video game, which means that his model is unfalsifiable. Whereas if you believe that you have an alternative model that's scientific, it can be falsified if you're truly playing by the rules of science. Whereas, so the 24-hour sun would debunk a scientific model proposing to be representing the flat Earth. it would have been just debunked on the grounds of the 24-hour sun makes it impossible. However, if you believe we're in a video game, then anything is possible. And that's kind of the little loophole here. Now, it's also something that takes it out of the realm of serious inquiry, so it's no longer serious. The video game Earth theory is not serious. It's not a challenge to anything. And I would just point out, too, that all of the people we're talking about here in this flat Earth group are all reality impaired. Yeah, sure, they may correctly arrive at the conclusion that NASA is a big fat liar, that Musk is a liar, that Kate Perry didn't go to space. Yeah, they're correct on that. But for the most part, they're confused as hell as to what is real or fake on the world stage. I remember one conversation where Mark Sargent was asked, because we were testing people, we were checking who has figured this out and who is still clinging to alternative media, false flag theories, and the like. And he and others said, no, we believe people died in Vegas at the Harvest Festival. And I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it. Like, who? If you reveal something to be a psychological operation, a hoax, what is your basis then for saying that there's any body count? One of the rules here, one of the axioms, really has to do with claims of body counts. Because one, I think we can agree, we shouldn't just believe headlines. But if the headline says 50 dead, do you just believe it? Well, what if you see something that makes you think it's maybe a drill? Do you just subtract? Well, maybe only 20 died. Maybe it was 10. No, it doesn't work that way. If there's any doubt that gets you to think that the body count might be inflated, even by one, if there's any doubt as to whether anybody actually died, your starting assumption should always be 0. Your starting assumption is not the number they give you, if there's any doubt whatsoever. And with the Vegas thing, there was plenty there to suggest we were looking at a psyop, a drill. So the body count should actually rightfully start at 0. And if you think it's anything higher, or it's somewhere between 0 and the body count they give you on the headlines, well, then you're technically confused. And by confused, I mean you can't tell between fantasy and reality because you're a media literalist and don't know you're being lied to strategically. And this goes for all of them. I mean, McToon, for example, scientific mind, smart guy, he can describe to you how the globe works and why the flat Earth doesn't work from his perspectives, which are all based on, of course, observational data. However, he thinks everything on the news is real. He doesn't know about media fakery. He and his ilk scoff at the idea that the news media could be lying. Like, people will admit, okay, there's a bias left, there's a bias right, but they're not willing to entertain the idea that media itself is a liar. And that's one of the best kept secrets. It's truly the only conspiracy theory worth investigating and uncovering. Forget Bigfoot, UFOs, adrenochrome, addicted Democrat, satanic vampire cults. The main thing we should be focusing on is media fakery and the extent of it. And this is where most truthers go wrong. They're like, yeah, mainstream media is fake, but our stuff is real. No, I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. But I see sheep on the left, sheep on the right, sheep at the extremes. If you're in the political horseshoe, you're being shepherded around. In fact, I came across this article today that doesn't surprise me one bit. And it has to do with the invisible puppet master. This is an article that came out. I'll see if I can find the source. I saw it linked on Reddit. Listen to this. AI persuasion. The invisible puppet masters, AI's disturbing new role in shaping public minds. The University of Zurich researchers deployed AI bots to manipulate Reddit users' opinions and to chill anyone who values authentic human discourse. It says here, these digital persuaders would analyze the users' past histories. All of their arguments would then be crafted and tailored to that person to change their mind. So they're studying you. And I mentioned the other day how Netflix had access to all of your Facebook DMs and your browser history. And given that information, I said they can target market psyops to any demographic. Easy. And guarantee belief, guarantee widespread acceptance. And here it says They've succeeded spectacularly. They've achieved persuasion rates 6 times higher than normal human interactions. So the bots are 6 times more convincing. They get 6 times higher rates of changing minds with the bots than with real people. Norbu LA says, hey, did you hear chemtrails are real, dimming the sun? Yeah, that's BS. I can't believe people still fall for it. And we got like RFKs out there taking questions from chemtrail people, and he's like, they put it in the jet fuel. No, it's a lie. And not only is it a lie, it's a provable lie, and it's a targeted psyop. Look, I just mentioned how they can target market psyops to specific demographics based on what they believe and what they're likely to accept, or they can convince them because they know how to. Well, I would posit here that just as climate change is very attractive to far left because it gives them a weapon to attack the private sector and regulate it and justifies their hatred of it, so too is the right target marketed the chemtrail psyop. There's a reason why liberals don't care about chemtrails. They've got climate change to blame on the private sector. The chemtrail hoax is targeted at right-wingers, and who do they blame? They don't blame corporations. They don't blame the Republicans. No, they blame the government, the deep state, the leftists, basically, the statists. They blame the government and the secret government at that. In fact, RFK said it's a DARPA project. RFK, talking out of his backside, said it's a DARPA project. Like, that is ridiculous. It is absurd. And if you still believe in chemtrails, you just haven't done any research about the predictability of persistent condensation trails. And if you cannot debunk the predictable persistent contrails, if you can't find something even, I guess, as useful, I mean, like, for example, you can find charts that show you how to predict contrails. Can you predict chemtrails? Can you in any way provide any sort of intel? Like, hey, next week they're going to dump chemicals on us. No, you can't. You can only respond to pictures. And these pictures are never connected with their location, the altitude. You could track every plane. You know that, right? So if you're going to say you believe in chemtrails, I would say, well, show me a picture of one. Let's just start with that. Show me a picture that you took, not that you saw on the internet. And then once you have that picture that you took, give me the metadata, and we'll track it to an airplane, and we'll correlate the altitude, the temperature, the pressure, and see, does this comport with the predictions for persistent contrails? And it will. The Air Force figured this out of necessity. They couldn't have their expensive military aircraft giving away their location with trails. So what did they do? They created a chart to predict the conditions that would make those likely so they could avoid it. It's that simple. And the predictability of these things has been known since the 60s, which means that chemtrail theory, if you want to call it that, flies in the face of data that would contradict it, which means it's intentionally being put out there. And what's more, it's being put out there because it fits into this left versus right dialectic. Left-wingers get climate change to blame on the right. Right-wingers get geoengineering to blame on the left. It's very simple. It's programming. It's a bifurcated psywar. And for every big psyop motivating one side of the political spectrum, they have one on the other. These are equal. They're both wrong. That's another aspect to it, too. They're both wrong. And these are both emotionally held beliefs. Like, do you think the people that lay in the streets or glue themselves to airplanes or throw tomato paste at oil paintings, do you think that they are acting rationally or emotionally? I think we can agree that they're being emotional about it. And I would argue that chemtrail believers are emotional. Whenever I talk about it with them, they can't even think critically about what I'm saying. None of them have said, hey, I debunked your Appleman chart. No, you didn't. They don't even get there. They attack me. They accuse me of being a shill for the airlines. Like, Delta Airlines gives me frequent flyer miles whenever I debunk chemtrails for them. But it's a lot of factors beyond just altitude. But we're talking about a very well understood phenomenon, anthropogenic cirrus clouds. It's really simple. And another thing that catches them, because I can identify half a dozen logical fallacies that you need to ignore in order to believe in chemtrails. You got loaded questions, you have appeals to motive, but one of the more effective ones, and this one gets a lot of people, is faulty causality. Crow 777 falls for this one. So it's not like you're a fool for falling in it. Many intelligent people fall for this stuff. Crow 777 will look at contrails, believing that these are chemtrails, and he will boil vinegar in his front yard, like in a cauldron, like a wizard. And he claims that the boiled vinegar dissipates the chemtrails. Now, if you can believe this, if it's true that he is having an effect, then it would have to be said that boiling vinegar can dissipate cirrus clouds, which makes zero sense. But this is all under the presupposition that there's something else going on up there. But others have prayed them away. I've seen people pray to various gods. There's a couple of individuals, they pray to this I think it's the Black Hebrew Israelite lightning god, Yahweh. I've seen others pray away the chemtrails. Some have said that the airplanes that spray these things are really fallen angels. And the thing is, they pray and the chemtrails disappear. They boil their vinegar, the trails disappear. Well, what's happening here? Well, they were going to disappear anyway. Doesn't matter what you did. You could sit there just looking at them. You could boil vinegar, or you could just ignore them. They go away. It would be the same thing if I pointed at the sun and said, that thing's going to set over there where I'm pointing because I'm pointing. No, it was going to go down anyway. So they're taking credit for something. That's faulty causality. But the fact that people still fall for this is really, I think, it's just an easily understood bit of just mind games. It's kind of a tricky thing. For example, they see the plane leaving a bunch of trails. Later in the day, there's a haze. So they say, well, hey, A came before B, therefore A caused B. No, the planes only indicated the conditions up above, that these clouds were going to form anyway, with or without the planes. But it's easy to understand if you look at it as the planes caused it, and that's your presupposition. But anyway, I don't waste very much time with it, but I have made it a point to debunk chemtrails and every argument in favor of them, because I think chemtrail belief is a target marketed psyop, and it's designed to specifically seem reasonable to people on the right fringe in the conspiracy communities. And again, it's Gretaism, chemtrail Gretaism. And it's always the same. They're just always, the arguments are so disingenuous. And it's funny how programmed believers can be. If you believe something, you generally have like a way of defending it that everyone else uses. So I'll point these things out and they'll say, well, we're not talking about the lines in the sky. We're talking about stratospheric aerosol injections that you can't see. Like, well, then why are we looking at lines in the sky as evidence for this? But I run into these same things, and having debated many of them, I realized, okay, there's a reason they believe in this. There's a list of logical fallacies that are built into it. You cannot convince somebody these things exist without loaded questions at the very basis of it. You have to load your question with also the appeal to ignorance. And this is where it's a sad argument, because in order to argue pro chemtrail, you have to feign ignorance about a lot of stuff, and you have to have a misunderstanding of what geoengineering is. Okay, like Steve, great example here, says geoengineering is not a conspiracy. There's plenty of info on it. Various governments are admitting to it. See, that's a common refrain, but you could not tell me what geoengineering is by definition. Geoengineering has been used by conspiracy theorists for like 20 years to describe secret government projects to alter the weather. That's not what it is. Geoengineering is actually an environmentalist term, and it refers to climate change remediation. So yes, geoengineering refers to any kind of proposal, any method used to combat climate change. So just bringing up geoengineering, you are therefore accepting the existence of climate change. Do you believe in climate change? Steve V in chat. Do you believe in climate change? Because if you don't, then why are you suggesting that geoengineering is real, which again is climate change remediation? So geoengineering is not a term you should be using. And you say weather modification, but I guarantee you don't believe in climate change. See? Why is it that the same people who believe in weather modification don't believe in climate change? What's the difference? It's the same damn thing. One is caused by government, one is caused by overuse of fossil fuels in the private sector. You both believe the same thing. If you believe in weather modification, you believe in climate change. It's the same thing, just different name, different label. Sort of like how if you buy Super Male Vitality from Alex Jones, it's the same formula as Gwyneth Paltrow's Love Goop powder. It's the same stuff. You can look it up. Gwyneth Paltrow sells this female, I don't know what it is, aphrodisiac or some kind of formula. It's the same stuff, just different labels. And I'm saying that chemtrails and geoengineering, it's the same psyop with a different label. And you have no evidence for chemtrails. You have no evidence for weather modification. All you have are rumors and government docs, which aren't evidence. You're like, we never believe the government because they're a bunch of liars. They lie about climate change, but we trust them when they leak stuff. Steve says they modify the weather to show climate change. So what you're saying is they're using geoengineering to create climate change. So you're saying climate change is real, but that it's not caused by the private sector, it's caused by the secret government. That's exactly what you're saying. You're saying, I agree that there's climate change, but I'm not causing it with my SUV and my free market activities. No, it's being caused by the secret government, and they're scapegoating us. And I'm saying, prove climate change exists first. Prove weather modification exists first, then we can talk. But you haven't demonstrated that yet. So you have a lot of work ahead of you. And citing, so you say there's no climate change, but now you're saying that they do weather modification to fake climate change. Unless you're saying that they do weather modification, but they haven't yet made it extreme enough to cause climate change. I mean, what exactly are you saying? You cannot deny climate change and promote weather modification in the same breath. That's 1984 shit. That's doublethink. That's cognitive dissonance. Like, which is it? I mean, pick one or the other. It's like, I believe that the government is modifying the weather, but there's no way that we're inadvertently modifying the weather. It's just the government doing it. Nope, it's the same thing. Again, bifurcated psyops, and I don't fall for it. And it should actually kind of jolt you to see that only people on your side of the box within the MSM in your subset believe that, and people on the other side believe the complete opposite. You know, if you're in any of these situations, I just recently put out a book, a short book called Anti-Anti. In fact, I sent it out in the newsletter, so you've already got it. It's on Amazon now. Anti-Anti says that if you take the pro position, you're obviously wrong. But if you take the anti position, you are part of the bifurcation. You're part of the duality that they set up. So you're not actually opposing anything. If you're in the anti position, you're part of the psyop. You can be part of the psyop on the left or from the right, but both sides are part of it. I mean, we all agree that the news, left and right, the Republicans and Democrats, that they're all working for the same end. Why would you think that you can join one side of the political spectrum and be on the side of truth? No, actually. So I'm anti on both of these positions because they're both built on the presupposition that man is altering the weather. And I don't know if I believe that. And you're saying you do believe it. You're saying, I believe that the government alters the weather. Well, I don't. I have no evidence for this. So if you have evidence, provide it. But if you're saying that the climate change is evidence of weather modification, then you just basically agree to what Greta says with a different label. Truth Detective says, is IPS a ball believer? You know, I'm glad you said that, because you can only ever be a ball believer. You know, it's really an article of faith. I mean, I guess you could say it's the best explanatory model based on what we've been shown, but I don't think we've been shown enough information to know. Like I say, you can't believe the headlines. Like, oh, it's a headline, so I believe the story. Well, no, you have to read the story, vet the information first. And I don't think we have enough information to arrive at a complete model. I'd like to know more, but I'm not really convinced right now. And what really messes it up here is this fake space thing. If they weren't faking space, then it would be easy to say we've got a complete model because we know what is here and what's outside of it. But if we don't know what's outside of it, then we don't know that we've seen it all. And for all we know, I mean, we could be on a spinning ball exactly as they describe, but it is not the one that they showed us from space. So what are they hiding? A continent or two? Extra land? Steve, you want to call in? Yeah, if you want to call in and shill for chemtrails, if you want to go for it, but you don't have one, you said you've done a lot of research and observations. You have nothing written down. You have zero information about any specific trail sighting, the composition of them. All you have is recycled trutherisms and orthodoxies. Like the phrase geoengineering, you didn't know that geoengineering is an environmentalist term. But I'll give you a link if you want to call in and try to convince us to be scared of the sky. But I can't take you seriously if you don't wear a mask. How come you don't wear a mask? Do you believe that the chemtrails are safe to huff? There's the link if you want to come in and try to convince us to fear the sky. But I think sky phobia is one of the entry-level psyops that gets you into Trutherville. Because once you accept the premise of that, then you're a target for all kinds of other things. And you could not have come to believe in chemtrails without having ignored several logical fallacies, specifically the loaded question fallacy. They got you with that one. What are they spraying? Oh, loaded question plus argument from ignorance. What are they spraying? I mean, if you say, what are they spraying? You already started off with a lie, or rather a false description. You're misrepresenting it. How do you know it's a spray? Define spray. And is there any substance that could be put in an airplane that would have the ability to cover that many miles and that much volume of this supposed spray? Like, I kind of doubt that. I mean, look at the sheer volume of the so-called chemtrail. What makes a lot more sense is you're looking at the result of hot air, hot jet exhaust, doing exactly what you would expect it to do. Unmitigated Mind says, I think it's possible that man has enough tech, machinery, and ingenuity to influence climate locally at the least, but not to affect lasting change. Well, that wouldn't be climate. That would be weather. And some people will say, oh, you don't believe in cloud seeding. That's another common refrain. And I'm like, wait, cloud seeding and what you're proposing as chemtrails are two different things. There's a magnitude of scale here. The difference is so vast between dropping some stuff in a cloud that may or may not affect it and these long trails. Just consider the volume. Steve says, so you believe a plane can simply start and stop those trails on demand? That would be called a straw man, where you misrepresent somebody's explanation so you can just discard it. No, I don't believe that, but I know why that happens. And the planes are not spraying anything. That's the problem. And that's the loaded question. What are they spraying? You're like, well, I don't know what they're spraying. Let me figure it out. There's not a spray. That's the crux of it. There is not a spray. And again, if you look at the length of a chemtrail, how much volume it covers, and do you really think that there could be anything in a plane that would be able to put that much volume out there? I mean, these things are massive. Well, no, it's just hot air. Chemtrail theory is a bunch of hot air. But you don't have any evidence, and if you did, why aren't you going to the police? I actually asked people this before. It's like, if you really believe you're being poisoned, you're awfully apathetic. Like, what is it in the chemtrails that makes you so apathetic? Like, you're breathing in the chemtrails, and now you're just chill. You don't care that you're being poisoned. Because I've never seen a chemtrail person say, let me go ahead and call the airplanes. Like, look, you go to a fast food place, and you get a rat's tail in your Big Mac, you're calling the manager. Like, hey, you guys messed up my meal. But now you see these airplanes every day, and you believe they're dumping poisons on you and changing the climate, and you can't be bothered to call Delta Airlines, their customer service. Hey, would you guys stop dumping chemicals on my house? And you've been observing it for decades. So I hear people saying, yeah, I believe that for decades they've been poisoning me and I haven't lifted a finger. Like, okay, you don't really believe it. You don't believe it. Or if you do believe it, then why do you have enough energy to challenge the non-believer, but you don't have enough energy to challenge the offenders? Chemtrail believers will spend more time trying to convert non-believers or shaming non-believers than trying to stop the problem. I'm telling you, it's a cult. It is a cult. They're not changing the weather. They're not changing the climate. And it's just ignorance about clouds. And at this point, it's a little sad. It's not as bad as anti-vax. It's not as bad as the Hitler fan club, but chemtrails pretty much, it's kindergarten trutherism. Like, you should be past that. Let's move on. Oh, Let's Go says, it's time to make a tutorial on logical fallacies. People out there need a refresher. Some people just don't care. But let me just give you one of them. What are they spraying? Says person A to person B. Person B doesn't know what causes those. He thought it was just jet exhaust. But then he's like, wait a minute, jet exhaust wouldn't just stay up there like that, would it? I don't know. I don't know. What are they spraying? So then you walk away with questions. Now, this is an appeal to ignorance fallacy because it never was a question. The answers are available, but the person asking the question did not provide the answers, did not provide facts, but merely speculated as though it was a question. So treating something that's not a conspiracy like it is, and appealing to the ignorance of the person you're asking is kind of fallacious, because now you've just misled them into thinking that nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's like, no, it's not even a question. You just haven't researched it. And this appeal to ignorance thing is pretty sad if you've been using this argument for year after year after year. But then also the question, what are they spraying, presupposes that they are spraying. And spraying is fundamentally different from hot air causing the rarefied cool air at 30,000 feet to crystallize and, create these trails of ice. Like, that's a byproduct of hot air in the cold, high altitudes. They can put out hot air all day, but there's not enough content for a spray to fill up these long trails, as they say. And then, of course, some will say cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is expensive. There's debates as to whether it actually works. I personally think that you could just dump crates of bottled water and get better effects. Like, I don't think cloud seeding is all that effective. But people look at cloud seeding and say, look, this is what they're doing with chemtrails. It's like, no, these are two different things, apples and oranges. But one thing that's missing here is, for all you chemtrail believers who don't have any evidence and don't do any rigorous observations and use the faulty causality to claim that you've seen sprays causing these overcast days, one of the things you don't have is you cannot predict anything. You can't say with any level of certainty, yeah, next week the airplanes are going to dump poisons on us and try to modify the weather and blot out the sun. You can't say that. You can't tell me. But I can look up on various websites and I can find out when they expect there to be persistent trails. Pilots know. Not because they're creating it, but because they fly up there and they need to know the conditions. And they know what conditions will cause the hot air they're leaving behind to leave these trails. So it's a useless debate, but I think it's a belief that is planted like a target market psyop to the right wing to keep them in this anti-left position, anti-government. But if you say you do your own observations, I don't believe you. And because you can't tell me what airplanes. Like, if I was doing observations, I would say, okay, this trail here was photographed at 3:33 p.m. in 33 seconds. I'm cross-referencing this with some airplane tracking websites, and I can tell you this was Southwest Airlines, and it was this flight. Then I can find out this flight was at this altitude, and this was the temperature. So that would be an observation. And then I would look at all the different observations and figure out, are there any trails that are outliers that exist where the weather conditions wouldn't have predicted condensation trails? That would be observational data. That would be rigorous. You haven't done anything rigorous like that. You only have rumor and a belief system. You don't have anything. And until you can come up with something predictable, you can't even pretend to have a model. or a theory. In fact, at this point, like people say ufology, like, no, there's no ology. It's a superstition. I'd also say that chemtrail theory, it's not a theory, it's not a study, it's not an ology, it's a superstition. You have zero evidence, so we can just stop. And you know what? One thing I have to say too is I admire the chemtrail people for their persistent dedication to protecting people and stuff. But compared to climate change activists, they're very apathetic. Like, why can't you climate change people? We see them all the time getting in front of cars. It's like it's a regular occurrence. They are ready to self-immolate for their cause. But when are you chemtrail fanatics gonna stand in the freeway with the sign or vandalize a painting or set yourself I'm not going to say that, but you know what I mean. Like one of these climate change nuts actually tried to set his arm on fire, another one tied herself to a net. Like, when are these chemtrail people going to do some kind of extreme action? Never. And I find that to be a little, I don't know, unimpressive, I guess, compared to, like, I mean, you can make fun of Greta all you want, but she got the world's attention. Dwayne Obith says fear porn is a hell of a drug. Yes, skyphobia is what I call it. And I think one of the things that they maintain in the system is fear of the sky. And it's interesting how this is a consistent facet on both sides of the aisle, and they each blame the other. I should not have been able to say, you don't believe in climate change, and I can predict this based on your adherence to chemtrails, and the person agrees. You should not be predictable. If you fall into these boxes, it means you're in their program. But anyway, look, chemtrail activists are ineffective, ineffectual, unmotivated, unimpressive, uninformed, and they come from a place of total ignorance. Like, I just don't know where to go with it. I'm kind of over it. If you believe in chemtrails, you got to do your research, because this is 2025. It's inexcusable. You're worse than Greta. Chemtrail believers are worse than climate change people. Sorry. There's just no other way to describe it. Because climate change people at least have fake science on their side. But what do you have on your side? You don't have even the semblance of science. And if you look back to where it started, it really picked up with Art Bell. Yeah, time to level up the Mandela effect. No kidding. What's getting people to believe it now is there's like some trending thing about the UK, they're dimming the sun. Like, haven't we already heard this before? Years ago, Alex Jones says that Bill Gates is going to block the sun with stratospheric aerosol injections. I've been hearing this for a long time. And nothing has come of it. And if you've been following the chemtrail theory for 20 years and you're not wearing a mask and you're not masking your dog when you take it on a walk, then what are you? Are you reckless? Or a hypocrite? Or do you not really believe what you scream about online? If I believed in chemtrails, I would be famous. Like, if I believed in chemtrails, I would be at every city council meeting. I'd be protesting outside of airports. I'd be calling into every talk radio show. I'd be wearing a mask. I would not let my family out of the house without masks on. If I believed in chemtrails, I would shut down cities, freeways. Like, I would not let the world rest. I would not let people just comfortably get on these planes knowing that they're destroying Gaia and poisoning people below, killing the crops, committing, extermination. It's an extermination campaign, depopulation. But since I don't believe in it, I'm just kind of like, well, I don't care. But what's your excuse? If you believe in it, why aren't you campaigning to stop this? Because out of all the conspiracy theories, chemtrails is the only one that gives you visual evidence, which is why I think it's so effective. Out of all the conspiracy theories, the only one that you can point to is literally chemtrails. See, that's evidence that we are being oppressed. That's evidence of a conspiracy against us. There is proof. The chemtrail people can only point to pictures of polar bears on chunks of ice trying not to drown. They can point to environmental devastation in pictures. But you, chemtrail people, have the advantage out of all the different conspiracies that you can point to it right there. That's probably why it's so convincing. How would a mask help you? You're the one claiming that you're being poisoned through stuff in the air. So you put on a mask, get your oxygen tank, a MOP suit, mission-oriented protective posture, full MOP gear, and proper decontamination procedures. You're like, yeah, absolutely. I was a 54 Bravo chemical warfare. I know all about decontamination, personal protection, protecting the units, equipment, how to do decons. We did a decon of the entirety of the base. It was a pretty big operation, and there's a process to it. So I understand how this works. And if I believe that we were under chemical warfare attack, that's where my mind would be. I would be in survival mode. But why aren't you campaigning against it? At a minimum, you could be screaming at the sky. I would be standing like the end is near, one of those signs that people wear. Mine would say, death from above, I'm put on a mat. I would be spreading the alarm. I would be making so much noise that we would probably have to stop it. I would bring an end to it, just saying. I just wish that some chemtrail people would have that kind of energy, which makes me again question their motivations. Steve says a mask doesn't help. Wait, if you don't need a mask, what does it do to you? Because this is where you have this divergence. Some believe it's chemicals that are brainwashing you, making you die younger, killing the plants. Others say, oh, no, it's just modifying the weather. So which is it? Is it sort of like CO2 for the environment? Is it modifying the climate? Or is it literally poison? I'm not obsessed with this topic. I have someone in here who's proposing it, and if you want to debate it, I'm willing to debate it. When do we get the IPS chemtrail merch? Well, in the IPS coloring book, Auto Hoax It, I do have a coloring book page that says hoax in chemtrails. But look, you can believe in chemtrails. I've lost friends over it. I've had people, in fact, Jake the A-hole stopped listening to IPS because I said, I'm not going to believe you guys until you start throwing tomato sauce on priceless paintings. And he said I was encouraging chemtrail people to commit crimes and go to jail. That's not what I was doing. I was encouraging you to be as active as the climate change people. That's all I was doing. But again, Frank Murr, appreciate the support there. Thank you for keeping gas in the tank. Steve says, I don't have all the info. Look, here's what you don't have. And we can just rest it at this. Okay, this is the end of it. You do not have a predictive model. Until you can come here with predictions for chemtrails over the next week, and you can weigh that against contrail predictions, until you can do that, you don't have a seat at the table here with regard to this debate. The debate's over. I ended it. I killed your chemtrails. Thank me. You can sleep better. You can breathe better. I have alleviated this fear. This fear has been debunked. There's always this meme, new fear unlocked. You see something on Twitter, something crazy you never thought of. And then it's like, in this case, it's a fear has been debunked. You should be thanking me. Like most people pay therapists to have paranoias and irrational fears expunged. Let's move on, since we're done with that. Steve says, I agree, I don't. Thank you. And look, this is not about you or me. It's about the facts. And when it comes down to any sort of observed phenomenon, if we're being scientific about it, we just have to admit that the model that has predictability, that you can make decisions based off of because it's consistent, reliable, has to be the one that you take over the one that has zero predictive capability. And you can't predict anything. Steve says he's not fearing anything. Well, I say you're skyphobic because you're either scared or you're just very brave. I'll just call you brave. Because if I believed that I was being poisoned by evil entities, by evil shadowy agencies throwing poisons into the jet fuel, I would be scared. I'm scared of dying. I don't want to die. I don't want to inhale poisons. Like, you should be afraid of that. If you're not afraid of an airplane spraying poison in your face, you're very brave then. I often saw people driving around with masks, 2021, and I think to myself, you either don't believe the hype of your own propaganda or you're very brave. How can you even go outside? So it's okay to admit that you're afraid. And chemtrail theory is terrifying. It is a terrifying notion that there is a conspiracy worldwide to consistently poison us day in, day out. If you're not afraid of it, you are super brave, or you're masquerading your fear with false bravado, which is what I think. Just admit that you're afraid. If you believe in climate change, you have to be afraid. If you legit believe that the oceans are rising, then you should be scared. No reason to pretend. If I thought 5G towers were emanating mind-controlled death rays, I would be scared. Like, I'm not trying to cover up. I just haven't found any reason to be afraid. But if I find a reason, I'll let you know. I'm not afraid of cirrus clouds. So I was going over this article about the invisible puppet masters and how AI is shaping minds and what they found. And this is from the University of Zurich. These researchers deployed AI bots to manipulate the opinions of Reddit users. And they said that the persuasion rates of AI is 6 times higher than with humans. And this is making me think about all of the controlled opposition agents, the ones who spread rumors. Like, chemtrail theory is a government psyop. It's just as much a psyop as UFOs. If you believe in UFO, in like abductions, UFOs that eat that beam up cows, mutilate cows, the whole Roswell thing. If you believe any of that stuff, a lot of it is mythology created by the Air Force. And when I trace these belief systems, they all come from the same sources. And I would suggest here that chemtrail belief is just as fake and comes from the same source as alien belief. So again, you can be a believer, but you don't know. And what I try to advocate here is a culture of non-belief. If you don't have reason to think this is true, then don't believe it. Just say, I don't know. I need more information. Your default should be non-belief. You could possibly be open to the idea that they're doing something, like I was. I was open to the idea. I hardly looked into it for years, but I couldn't quite explain it because I hadn't looked into it. I had people showing me. They said, look, these planes are spraying. Later, it's going to be overcast. And I saw that and I said, wow, okay, something's happening. I just didn't care that much to dig into it. But then later, when I started recognizing this political horseshoe and how you have woke and alt woke, and you have these parallel conspiracies all the way down, I looked at it closer. And when I studied the science behind it, I thought, okay, well, this makes sense, but then what's causing people to believe it? And after many, many nights of debating people, I arrived at a list of logical fallacies. And the last one that caught me. So at the end of a night, one of the persons said to me in the chat, she said, what makes you think that the bad guys are so nice they wouldn't do this to you? And someone else said, yeah, they're so evil. Why wouldn't they do this? And I thought, okay, I didn't have a refutation. So I looked into it, and it turns out that is the appeal to motive. Like, oh, these guys are so evil, of course they would do this evil thing. Well, that argument is not valid if you're trying to say this argument justifies believing this thing, because it doesn't add any facts to whether the thing actually happened. But anyway, if you believe in it, that's fine. Like, some people believe in climate change. Just know this: you fell for a psyop, and if it's any indication, just the sources of it, where it came from, where it's being spread, it's the same people. It's coming from special agents in the Air Force, something like that. Let's see here. Bobby says, why are there laws on the books to protect the institution from being sued because of the effects of aerosol injections in our atmosphere? I doubt it. And there have been some people passing, bills to ban this stuff. They're just pandering to ignorance. Again, the conversation ends until somebody can predict chemtrails. If you cannot predict it, then you can just stop. It's that simple. Okay, we talked about the AI has 6 times the persuasion rate. Now, this is, again, relevant to our conversation because we're always talking about how they put all kinds of agents in the field to promulgate misinformation, what I call guardrails. And they've been doing this for years, limited hangout operations, targeting people who've learned certain things, and they steer them in a certain way. I've experienced it myself. I've had people try to persuade me against saying certain things. There was a pretty strong effort that lasted for a good 2 or 3 years to try to get me to stop looking at the metascript perspective, that is news and entertainment being connected. They try to get me to stop doing that. I've had people like peer pressure. At one point, there was half a dozen people in a chat room, and all of them are basically saying to me, no, this is better explained by the simulation theory. And moreover, you're focusing on negativity in the news and you're just bringing negativity into your life. Like, that to me was a wake-up call. I had these people telling me not to watch the news. And I said, I'm the only person taking the fear out of the news, taking the atrocity out of the propaganda. So how does that add negativity to anything? But I noticed that there were, for a couple of years, a lot of simulation people trying to distract me from making these connections. And it actually started much earlier. I think this is a strategy. And it's to get people to stop looking into certain directions and to stop amassing a group of researchers on these weak spots in their system. Well, now they're replacing a lot of that with AI. AI can serve the same function. And I see it all the time. If you use ChatGPT, it does guardrail your conversations. It does have an intrinsic bias in favor of mainstream mediation. It is not objective. And it also is, we talk about where people are, the frames of reference. You're either MSM, MSM plus, or MSM minus. That is, you either accept the world stage as presented, or you add on to it with a bunch of conspiracy stuff, or you're a skeptic. Well, AI is MSM. AI, all of it, falls in the box of mainstream mediation. So they're built on the presupposition that the news is telling the truth, if biased, and that history is true, as recorded. Well, we all know that decades of fake news that we've studied just in detail reveals that our history has been bent towards the fakery, that the fake news is a small minority of all of the news that's produced, but it steers the greater narrative. So knowing this, we know history is not objective. News is not objective, but AI doesn't know this. So just to keep in mind, AI is not only not objective, but it is mainstream mediated and it's trained on that. See, Chibretta says, was this article popping up in your feed? Interesting timing with the recent OpenAI model. The narrative was pushed hard the past couple of days. Yeah. And I work with AI quite a bit. I'm learning as much as I can. And I think it would behoove all of us really to look at it as just the next iteration of search engine. And then, of course, all the various applications. It's just an upgrade all around. It's a tool. I think it's been heavily mystified. It's not Skynet. It's not HAL 9000. It's not conscious. It's not any more sentient than a magic 8-ball that you shake for answers. You're more likely to find sentience in a Ouija board. Oh, I love this one. This is one of my favorite ones. Bobby Johnson says, Tim, are you effing blind? You never look up. This is one of my favorite ones. Like, oh, you don't believe in the space station? Look up. You don't believe in chemtrails? Look up. As though I haven't looked. I love that. That's a common one. Let me ask you, Bobby Johnson, can you predict the days that you will be, quote, sprayed with poisons? Let me know in the comments, Bobby Johnson. If you can predict when they will be sprayed, he says, if you still reject aerosol injections, you're in fact stupid. You sound just like Greta. Why don't you just say, how dare you not believe in aerosol injections? And look, you're madder at me. You're using expletives. You're like, you effing dumb person. You're mad at me because I don't believe, but you don't have the motivation to call up the airlines and say, hey, I know what you guys are up to. Stop it. You won't call the airlines to stop poisoning you, but you'll get mad at me because I don't believe in what you believe in. What does my belief have to do with it? You yourselves agree that you don't need masks. It's not that dangerous. Side Girl says blocking the sun plans are all over the media. Yeah, it's all hype. It's as real as chemtrails, if that. Nobody's going to block the sun. You got Richie from Boston telling people that when he grew up, the sun was yellow and the sky was blue. And now the sky is white and the sun is white. I don't know. Maybe you should look outside once in a while. Don't frame your whole world, your whole perspective through the internet. I mean, if you just look at pictures of chemtrails on Twitter all day, you might get that impression. But the sun isn't yellow, wasn't yellow. If anything, it's green, but it's all the colors. And the way we see it depends on a lot of factors. And the sky, it depends on where you're looking, what time of day, what the climate is like. It just depends. Leo Friend says, are you practicing the appeal to motive fallacy when you say, if you believe this, you would? No, I'm actually making a statement here that if I believed chemtrails were real, I would be a major opponent of this whole agenda, because it's the only conspiracy that you can have evidence for that you can point at. I could say, look, that's evidence of a crime against humanity. This is against the Geneva Convention. This is chemical warfare. We should be in a state of emergency. I would not shut up. And I would get a bunch of people at my back to stand up with me. I would go to city council meetings. I'd organize marches. Like, I would not relent if I believed in this crap. But since I know it's not true, I don't care. But what's your excuse? If you claim you believe in chemtrails, all you do is get mad at the non-believers. Like, what does that say about you? You've never gone out of your way to warn anybody about the threat. So I don't take you seriously. And I would, again, Bobby Johnson, what is your prediction, your forecast? What is your chemtrail forecast for the next week? Bobby says he believes in the flat earth, but not aerosol injections. No, there's more nuance. One, I don't believe in flat earth. And if you believe in flat earth, you're just as bad as a chemtrail believer. I specifically advocate the position of the non-believer. I don't have enough information to say that the earth is flat. There's no, I mean, you could say it's observably flat. We experience it as flat, and any evidence of curve is coming from media. But as far as, do I have a model? No, there's no like model you can provide. But is the globe model a complete model? And I would say, well, not if space is fake. So we don't have a complete model. This leaves me in the state of agnosticism. But when it comes to your chemtrail fantasy, there is decades of research, decades of predictability when it comes to persistent contrails. So what are you going to do about decades of research that goes against your claim? Just claim it's not there? What are they spraying? It's a question. It's not a question. It's not a valid question. Asking what are they spraying is a loaded question that implies that it's not known. So why are you using Jedi mind tricks to convince people of your stuff? If it was true, you wouldn't have to rely on logical fallacies or shame. Like, oh, if you don't believe in this, you are effing dumb, as you said, or effing blind. You don't look up. Like, no, you wouldn't be worked up and you wouldn't be mad at me. Why don't you go march or fight for your beliefs? Bobby Johnson says. I'm not a believer. I told you I'm an inactivist. This is academic, ivory tower, conscientious objector. But you have no excuse for not marching down the street, knocking on doors like Paul Revere. Tell your neighbors. They're going to spray us tomorrow. Wear your mask. But you can't predict the spray. And the thing is, I could predict it. I can tell you, oh, there will be lines in the sky tomorrow. But I'm not predicting it on the basis of some nefarious government experiment or chemical warfare operation. I'm predicting it on the basis of the weather. Losers Go Pew says there might be bigger things to worry about. No, there isn't. There's nothing to worry about. That's the thing. Name one thing we should be worried about. Are you worried about nukes, planet killer asteroids, space junk, EMP? What exactly are you worried about? What are we distracted from? Like, we shouldn't be worried about chemtrails. We should be worried about 5G towers and Dr. Fauci. Like, no, there's nothing to worry about. Unless I'm missing something. But there's value in addressing this, because what we are doing is we are breaking away from Trutherville, which is alternative media and all of their belief systems. We don't need these beliefs. If you're a believer, stay in Trutherville. Off-world stage is not the position of the mainstream believer or the alternative media believer. We don't have this hysterical mindset. Bobby says aluminum, barium. Again, you have nothing to support that claim. Like I said, you can't even begin this conversation until you can predict something, and you can't. Side Girl says getting poison from the food or mandatory shot. Look, nobody got poked that didn't want it. And who's getting poisoned by the food? I don't know. Like, I don't think that RFK Jr. is a valid source of anything. The guy eats roadkill. He left a dead bear in a park for some inexplicable reason. Didn't he behead a shark? Like, I don't really trust his judgment. He walks around barefoot on airplanes. Like, he's scared of needles, but he'll walk around in an airplane, like even in the restroom, like barefoot. But no, there's nothing to worry about. And if you have a problem with that, I can't help you. Like, some people want to believe we're in the end times. We're not. Let's Go says the breakaway is important so we can free our mind to pursue higher. Well, that's the thing too. Your bandwidth is limited. So how many things do you need to care about? How many things should you be legitimately scared of? Like, this is a concern of mine. Like, I'm not concerned about any of these things. But I am concerned with the mind control. And I'm saying that the chemtrail psyop is part of the mind control. If you accept that premise, you are in their box. Unless you think it's good to be in the box. I mean, you can look at the woke and the mainstreamers and call them asleep, unaware, brainwashed, mind-controlled, nullified, conquered. You can say these things about them, but you can say the exact same thing about everybody in alt media until you have stepped away from it. And I've stepped away from it. Leo Friend says, in the film Snowpiercer, the entire planet enters a new ice age after a failed geoengineering scheme to halt global warming via continuous stratospheric aerosol injections to reflect the sunlight. Right. Again, it's a doomsday scenario for those who don't believe climate change. You have these different doomsdays that you have to have one. I don't have one, but you're supposed to have one. If you truly believe the science and you're a scientific person, if you consider yourself such, then you should believe that the world's going to end in 2030 because climate change. If you are alt media, you have alternative reasons to think the world's going to end. I don't think the world's ending. So this doomsday stuff doesn't really affect me. But the fact that that particular scenario is in a movie like Snowpiercer tells you everything you need to know. Is there anybody here who lives in the end times? In my real life, IRL, I never met any doomsday prophets or people who thought the world's going to end. And then I go to a flat earth conference, and what was that guy's name? He's always crying. Rick Hummer. He's like, we're in the end times. He's telling me, took me to the side. He's like, do you believe it? I'm like, no. I felt sorry for him at first. I almost laughed. I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, we're in the end times. These are the end of days. And it turns out that after the conference, they had a follow-up conference called Skyfall, where they convinced that all the flat earth people that believed there was a dome, that God was going to knock the dome down and show his face to the entire world, and that the glass would fall down and crush the non-believers. It didn't happen. Cy Girl says they would never use humans as lab rats or guinea pigs. Yeah, that's called appeal to motive fallacy. That one used to trip me up. People would say, oh, you think they love you and they wouldn't use you as rats or guinea pigs. Well, that does not lend credence to your claim that they're poisoning the skies. That's an appeal to motive fallacy. So we can go ahead and reject that as an argument in favor of anything. And you didn't specify who they were, by the way. Ollie Goering says Cheese Whiz and canned whipped cream are technically aerosol injected toppings. Bobby says, if you can't tell the difference from a contrail and an aerosol injection, how can we take you seriously? You cannot differentiate these things. You have zero evidence. You can't provide it. And again, all you have are memes. Show me a picture of a contrail, and then I'm going to cross-reference it with the flight paths and I'll find out who did it, what altitude, and the weather conditions. And again, we're going to see, was this predicted by the contrail model? So again, go home with your chemtrail model and come back when you have something that works. It's debunked. You can let it go. And again, you should be thanking me, not debating me. You should be thanking me. Either go do your homework and construct a model that you can predict these things on par with the contrail thing, or explain how contrails are predictable, or you have to just admit that you're wrong. No reason to hang on to fear. One of the reasons for employing skepticism in its original concept, it was suspending judgment to avoid attaching yourselves to a lot of needless fear and worry. They called it epiche, which means suspension of judgment. The original skeptics. And the original skeptics, there's this guy named Piro. And he said that if you continue to suspend judgment, you end up not believing as much. Because when you wait, you find out, wait, there was no reason to believe that. So think about all the fake news that you believed automatically until you found out how the whole thing is rigged. Now, you're like, well, it's fake until proven real. You don't believe as much. You're not using as much of your bandwidth on BS, on things that you have no business being afraid of or being concerned about. And they said that if you maintain this state of suspension, you would arrive at what they called ataraxia, peace of mind. I mean, you free your bandwidth from a bunch of needless fear and emotional engagement. And what does that leave? Well, you could focus on other things. And this led to Epicureanism, hedonism, seeking joy in life. And auto hoaxers are pyromaniacs on the world stage. Coyote Smoke and Mirror says, good point, Tim. If it's in a movie, it's predicted programming of what they predict, what a doomsday thing we should be afraid of next. Yes, exactly. Exactly. They show us endless examples in dystopian sci-fi of how climate change is going to kill us all. And they also show us how government secret projects are going to kill us all. And if it's predicted programming, they're not telling us that it's going to happen for real. It's conditioning you to accept these as inevitable situations if we don't change. Calm Down says, around here, they spray the skies in crisscross patterns before a storm. I live on the waterfront in the LBC. Okay, a couple things about that. The reason why they crisscross is the same reason why your city streets crisscross and have intersections. Those are flight paths. And the reason why you see those before a storm is because the conditions conducive to the storm also are conducive to persistent trails. So the trails actually predict the storm. They don't cause the storm. That's faulty causality. It's a very common misconception. Yeah, Bobby says, damn, Tim, I used to like listening to you, but when you start chemtrail troll stuff, look, again, I offended your belief system, but it's not going to help you in any way to believe a lie. Do you believe in alien abductions? Why not? The same agencies that promulgate that myth also give you your chemtrail myth. I'm doing you a favor. I mean, what do they pay therapists these days? To eradicate irrational fears. Mazel says, I think IPS needs to make a PowerPoint on the issue. Thank you, Ted Stryker, handing out 20 blue wrenches. Okay. I could do a PowerPoint. And I could outline every single logical fallacy, and I could lay down the case here that until you can predict your magic chemtrails, you have no business spouting off about your magic chemtrails. Bobby says, the same people that tout climate change deny chemtrails. Exactly. You see, it's bifurcated. Chemtrail believers reject climate change, and they blame the government for the weather modification. They call it geoengineering. Climate change people don't believe in chemtrails, and they blame the private sector for messing up the weather. So you're in a box. It's actually quite simple. I'll have to do a diagram for you. So there's a big box that everybody's in. We're over here outside of it. The programmers are on top of it. You're inside of it on the right side in a subset of the MSM box. So the mainstream believers believe in climate change. The people who don't believe that believe in other stuff. That's the plus. That's the additional stuff. So you're in a subset of mainstream belief. You're deeper in the matrix if you believe in this stuff. One way to tell, just inspect whatever red pill that you're about to imbibe, because if it contains any fear narrative, it's fake. It's that simple. The red pill movement, trutherism, where they're like, oh, these are the red pills, and you get these like really hard truths about life. No, those are all based on lies. You probably believe in false flags. I hope you don't. Yeah, we're trying to move on from the topic. I think I've made it clear that if you don't have a predictable model that can tell us anything about what causes these things or when they're going to arrive, then you don't have anything. And it's really that simple. Look up the Appleman chart. But as Mizell said, I should probably do a PowerPoint. But I don't know what good it would do. Because when somebody comes to believe something because of logical fallacies, they didn't arrive at it through reason. And so you can't take them out of it with reason. Here's a link. Truth Hurt says, I don't care if they're really spraying or not. What am I going to do about it if it was real? Well, here's the thing. There's no evidence of spraying. The claim that there's a spray has never been substantiated. That's always been a misrepresentation of what you're seeing. If you actually look at the airplane, there's no spray coming out of it. The trails form a significant distance from the airplane itself. It's moving so fast, but they form after. And the formation of these things is not a mystery. Anybody thinking there's even a question is admitting to ignorance on the topic. And it's based on the appeal to ignorance. It's really that simple. But I'm willing to debate it because I think it's useful. Hey, what's up, caller?
What's up? Yeah, I'm calmed down too. That's my other channel, just to let you know.
Okay. So what is your opinion on the matter?
You're talking about the aerosol injection, or?
Yes.
I don't know what the fuck it is, but I've been seeing it for years, crisscrossing in the sky. It's not all the time, but when it's happening, it'll be happening day after day. I don't know what the hell it is. And I mean, I didn't get sick during the whole COVID shit. I never got sick. So I don't know.
So what I'm saying is this. Okay, the reason why we don't know what these things are is because we're not really taught it specifically. And so there's like this gap in our understanding. And we just kind of passively see these planes. Oh, it's just pollution is what I thought.
Well, where I live by the Long Beach airport and LAX and John Wayne. I live right there. I'm in Long Beach. So there's like 3 major airports, and then there's Los Alamitos airport right there. So there's planes all the time, but these ones they're doing like this specific pattern. But I don't know what the fuck it's doing. I don't feel poisoned.
Yeah, the pattern is flight paths. And so there's a list of things that are brought up as, quote, evidence of chemtrails. But these are all flight paths that can be attached to specific planes. So the next time you see the grid pattern, photograph it. And
I made videos on it before. I have videos on my channel.
Okay, well, we could take your location, those videos, and look at flight paths of the day, and we could identify every single one of those flight paths. They're all traced. This is how McWest debunked all the drone sightings as airplanes. Yeah. And once you've realized, okay, these are just regular airplanes, then you can look at the altitudes, the conditions, and you could say, was this predicted by the weatherman when they put out the information about contrail formation and persistence? And that's what you're going to find, that the weather channel, the weatherman, can predict these things, and you can't. Why is that?
I thought they were just cloud seeding, right? They're making the weather, right?
No, because cloud seeding is also very much overstated by conspiracy theorists. Cloud seeding only works on specific clouds that are about to rain anyway, and they inject substances in it to cause the water droplets to form.
But out here, check it out. They'll leave the trail, right? And that trail will slowly drift apart, and it'll make these weird clouds. That's what happens. There'll be no clouds in the sky. It'll be a totally blue sky, and all of a sudden they start doing it. But it's always when it's like pretty windy. That's what I noticed, because it's not all the time.
No, it's not all the time. But the thing is, there's factors involved as to whether or not hot air passing through that altitude will leave a trail. It depends on a number of factors. And what I'm saying here is that the weather observations can tell you the weather corresponds to when these things form. If it was something coming out of a plane, whenever they decide to spray it, it wouldn't perfectly line up with the weather conditions every single time. And the fact that you see the trails first and then you see the cloud cover, yeah, that's easy to explain because the trails only form when these conditions exist where the haze.
Well, okay, so they'll be doing these crisscross patterns, right? And then the fucking trail stays in the air and then it expands. But at the same time, there'll be planes going by, leaving a little trail and it disappears. But I don't know what I don't know what elevation each plane is at, so I don't fucking know.
Yeah, that's what makes the difference because you'll see some where you'll see two planes in the sky at once. The one closer to you is leaving a trail, and the one higher up is not, or vice versa. And yeah, this is all explained when you look at a cross section of the altitudes and what the temperature is, what the humidity is. That's it, because it's just a question of, is the hot air going to do something that's going to persist, or is it not? It really depends on these factors external to the airplane.
Hey, but when I was younger, I would look up in the sky a lot more than I do now. I would look at clouds and shit and planes. But now, I don't really look up in the sky now. But when I do, every once in a while, I'll see the fucking crisscrossing planes. When I was younger, that shit never happened. We had sky riders. They have those planes and they would make letters in the sky, but we never really had that crisscrossing pattern shit in like the 80s and the 90s. That's like started sometime in the 2000s, it seemed like. But maybe I'm tripping. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like some people say they remember the sun was yellow. Well, sure. All the cartoons, it's
it depends
yellow.
on what time of day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in the morning, it could be all types of colors, and then at sunset. But during the day, it's more whitish. Anyway, out here.
Right. Well, every question that has been raised has been answered, and this is my main problem with this whole conversation, with this debate, is that the pro-chemtrail side remains steadfastly ignorant about the explanations for all the points that they raise. Like, why is there crisscross flight paths? Why does it break up? Well, you have to remember that the air, it's clear. We can't really see what's happening, but it's a very fluid environment. It's actually kind of chaotic. There's explanations for why you'll see a trail stop and start. It's not the pilot turning a switch on and off. These are things external to them.
Yeah,
but
I haven't spent a lot of time on it, dude, because it's just you see it all the time and nothing. It's like I don't worry about it. My life's going on. Like it hasn't affected me.
Well, I'm glad you're not worried about it, because worrying about these things is as bad as worrying about planet killer asteroids. This is what I'm saying. It's the bandwidth they get you to take up. And yeah, Copacetic says 2025. We're still debating it. Exactly. Well, the only reason I bring this up is to filter out people. If you could still be fooled by an appeal to motive fallacy, if you can still be tricked by a loaded question, or you're still fooling yourself with faulty causality, then you're not ready for the level of media skepticism we apply.
You know who I first heard this from, though? Back in the day, in the late 90s, it was on Art Bell. Was the first time I ever heard of chemtrails was Art fucking Bell.
Yeah,
probably
Art
like
Bell,
96 or 97, somewhere in there.
Art Bell and Whitney Strieber, the guy who put out the ideas of being probed by aliens, they wrote the first book on climate change disaster. It was like
The Quickening or the Superstorm or
the
something.
Superstorm. The Superstorm. Well, the whole alien thing was being promoted by the Air Force for very specific reasons. The mythology of it.
Yeah.
Same people. So I just think these are very questionable things.
Yeah. Going way back, it was the Air Force, right? Lieutenant Keyhole, and then you had the Face on Mars guy. It's always ex-military. It's always, you know what I mean? Like Roswell was that one general that showed it to Jesse Marcel, and then he showed it to his son, the wreckage, of Roswell.
Yes.
And it's all mythology, man. It's all bullshit when you review it. When you look at those old 70s UFO fucking movies, it's all cheesy. It's like really bad. I don't know.
Well,
And it,
last December, did you see the drone panic in New Jersey?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
didn't pay a
that,
lot of attention to it. I just thought it's whatever,
well,
some
the fact is,
type of psyop.
it explains how people can believe in UFOs, because you had all these people freaking out about drones, and then someone did their homework and they said, no, every single one of these sightings corresponds to a flight. And they identified every single one. And it turns out that at the end of it, despite thousands of people claiming that they saw drones, there were zero. Not one could be verified.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
anyway, I'll be addressing some of these questions. I mean, look, I did a quick search here, just to the crisscross thing. It says these are due to established paths of the aircraft. Like the simplest explanation usually suffices. What's more likely, they're making it rain, which isn't that bad, or they are taking flight paths that explain the crisscross pattern. And yes, these flight paths do correspond. That's, again, it's already been debunked.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you bringing these things up, because these questions need to be brought up because we're exposing a psyop, in my opinion. We're exposing a psyop, and by breaking this psyop down, we can get people to break their trust with their alt media sources, because this is mainstream alternative media claptrap. Everybody in alt media, from Alex Jones promotes this stuff. I don't drink the
Yeah.
Kool-Aid at Alex Jonestown, and this
Right.
is standard fare Alex Jones stuff.
What do you think about the fires that were out here in the Palisades and shit in El Tadino?
Controlled opposition, I'm sorry, controlled demolition. I think these are inorganic, some kind of I mean,
I
they
guess
have these
In El
evacuation.
Tadino, they never turned the power off. They were saying like a bunch of people are suing the SoCal Edison because they never turned the power off while the shit was burning. And supposedly that accelerates the fire or some shit.
Yeah, I got the feeling controlled demolition, and there's a ton of stuff in media that was kind of foreshadowing it, and I'm like, okay, this has got to be contrived. I'd like to know more about the extent of it, but I think it's controlled demo, like 9/11.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I
All right.
appreciate the call, and call back anytime.
All right. Peace.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. That was Challenger Hoax. Going through your comments, okay, Steve says not all of them are identifiable. Some don't appear on flight radar. Okay, now you don't have any evidence of unidentified aircraft dropping chemical toxins into the atmosphere. You don't. You're just claiming it. You don't have any evidence. If I saw an unmarked plane leaving chemicals in the air, I would call the National Guard. These are all like almost like it's like you guys have a list, a bullet point list. If they don't believe in chemtrails, say this, say this, say this. And it's always the same things. Oh, you just think the government doesn't want to do experiments on us. Or, oh, you just, they always kind of throw it back at you. Or they throw in other stuff. In this case, they're using secret aircraft. Okay, well, where are the secret aircraft? Where are these unmarked planes? Everything is tracked. So that's a tall claim. That's a huge claim. If you're going to say that the bad trails are left by secret government planes, now you're just into ufology. You might as well say UFOs. Oh yeah, there's Bigfoot on a unicorn, and it's just going across the stratosphere, marking its territory. And that's what we're breathing in. Because you're going into the area of ufology, just basically hearsay, say. Like, no, you can't say I saw. Look, I followed them on flight radar, Tim. No, I used to have people call in and they would say, I saw these planes leaving lines and I checked on my app and they weren't there. And then it rained. Like, you got your script down. You have your script, this idea of how these things work. Like, some people could sell you a convincing story of being abducted by aliens. You got the script. But no, you've never seen lines in the sky turn into rain. And you've never checked an app and saw unidentified planes. You're just fibbing. You're making it up. And if you're going to make this stuff up, why should we believe anything that you say? You never tracked a plane or tried to, only to find it wasn't there. Like, wait a minute, guys. That trail. Let me check and see. Wait, that plane's not on here. No, you've never done that. Come on, you even said earlier you're not a chemtrail activist. Truthful says, why didn't you make a video showing your evidence? Exactly. Show your evidence, or you can't really enter the debate. Side Girl says, Big Pharma is all about experimenting on the entire herd. What if they're like, I don't know, I've posited this before because people have said things like, oh yeah, they're putting baby meat in McDonald's and everything's toxic. And I'm like, what if they aren't doing that? Because based on what I've seen, sometimes I think they're putting life extension in the Big Macs. Like, what if they want you to live a long time so you can shop more, spend more? Hey, Bobby Johnson, as far as I'm concerned, you know, you're saying here Tim knows what you've seen better than you. Yeah. What I'm saying, if you're claiming that you saw UFOs, I'm saying no, you didn't. If you're claiming you saw something that doesn't exist, I can say you did not. There's Hitchens razor, very useful. I would say get one. Hitchens razor says that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And now he's calling me names. Tim has become an a-hole over this. Look, I'm sorry, but I'm just banning you. I don't need activists from mainstream media guardrail issues. Sorry. Bobby Johnson has been banned simply because this is not your place. You should be over in Alex Jonestown, maybe hitting the Q pipe, talking about 5G towers and chemtrails, MK Ultra and false flags and revelation of the method. Like, we're way past this stuff. We're not buying your fear. We don't have any need for it. We've diagnosed it. So you're not going to have any takers here. If you're going to push chemtrail phobia, go somewhere where you'll have a receptive audience. Well, yeah, the Q pipe thing. It's like you might as well go hit the Q pipe and talk about how JFK is going to fight the deep state and how Hillary Clinton's going to be executed at Guantanamo. That's where these people are at. Additives to jet fuels is still a quantity thing. But look, if nothing else has made you think about this, David Paul, what about this? When you look at these trails, think about the volume. How many miles, how big, how much quantity of a substance would be required to create that trail? And what's a better explanation? That this was sprayed out of an airplane, or this is a natural result of very hot air at very high altitudes? I mean, anyway, the facts are on my side. You can investigate them whether or not. Steve says, Tim, I'm personally not upset at you. I'm just talking about my observations, not trying to push them. Well, your observations are worthless if they're not attended by metadata and any follow-up or correlation with the flight paths. So your observations aren't rigorous enough to be considered here. It's like, I saw a light in the sky. It might have been a UFO. When was it? A few weeks ago. No, that's dismissible. Hitchens razor, get rid of it. I wouldn't bring that to you. I wouldn't waste your time with, yeah, I saw a light in the sky. I don't remember where I was. And people with the ISS do this all the time. They're like, yeah, I saw the space station, so it's real. Where were you? What was your latitude and what was your latitude, your longitude? What time was it? I don't remember. Okay, so you remember a light in the sky, but you don't remember where you were, when you were, and where you were looking. It sounds exactly like UFO abductees. Like, I just woke up in the middle of the field naked, but the last thing I remember was there was a light in the sky. So are you sure you weren't abducted by the ISS? David Polk says, does hot air at high altitude expand? If so, you're correct. Yeah, this is what I would suggest. Look into contrails. Anytime you're going to try to debunk an established explanation, you can't just provide an alternative without dealing with what was. The status quo matters in this instance. Braveheart says, you can tell there's deadly radiation in the air by dragging your feet across the carpet, and if you can shock someone, leave the area immediately. Well, let's continue. Look, we've killed chemtrails. We've killed the Mandela effect. We killed JFK Jr. what conspiracy theory out there have we not, what guardrail have we not already taken down? The person that called, Steve, was Challenger Hoax. I have his channel linked on one of the podcasts, maybe a couple days ago. Not hard to find. If he's here in chat, he can post his link. But anyway, Hitchens razor, anything that's not presented with evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Like, I don't need to counter your claim with evidence if your claim doesn't have evidence. I can just dismiss it. It's not polite, but the reason why I let that Bobby guy go for a minute was so you could see what the believers are like. The believers have no information. They attack the non-believer. They use shame tactics. He attacks my character. He attacks my intellect. He suggests that I'm dumb, I'm rude, I'm all these bad things because I don't believe in this crap. But I'm saying, no, you're actually part of the Psywar. If anybody has the moral and intellectual low ground, it's them. What's up, Lord Laney? Says oh yeah. Well, look, all you've missed so far is our conversation about the chemtrail psyop, and it's a psyop. Copaesthetic says they should film the planes, contrails in real time and selfie themselves with their masks on while spraying vinegar at the sky. Yeah, at a minimum. Like I said, if I believed in it, I would be taking pictures of it. I'd be putting timestamps. I'd be I'd say, okay, look, this was Delta Airlines and they did that. And I would call them. Anyway, if a lot of the chemtrail believers paid me, I would be your champion. Like, I don't believe it, but if you put 5 or 10K into my pocket, I would dedicate a full month to nonstop chemtrail activism. I would shill for you, since you can't do it for yourselves. Since you won't stand up for yourselves and defend yourselves against this threat that only you believe in, I'll champion it for you. But I need some kind of incentive. It's funny that, you're like, I believe that the airplanes are spraying poisons on my pet, on my children, on my house, on my face, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I just don't understand where you're coming from. What's it going to take to make you get active? All right, let's move on. Any more dead horses to kick around? Richie from Boston says, how much longer are you going to wait? I've been warning you for a reason. Citibank goes out. Your money goes out. It's all going to be gone. Turn your fiat money into gold and silver at richielikesgold.com. So Richie from Boston is now hyping up blackouts because there was just a blackout so he can sell some gold. I like Richie from Boston. I used to think he was hardcore because he has that gravelly voice, vocal fry. He sounds like somebody who spent so much time podcasting about chemtrails, just out there in the field, always breathing this stuff in. I thought his voice got gritty because of it. Like, there's Richie out there driving across the country, documenting the chemtrails. I actually believed that for the longest time, that he was documenting chemtrails and that he was onto something, and that his voice was just proof of that. That's what happens when you're truthing so hard. Like Alex Jones. His voice sounds like someone who's been at war for years in the bunker. Just gravelly, gravitas, oozing gravitas. But no, Richie from Boston is here pitching gold before they turn the lights out. One of my favorite episodes was April Fool's Day 2020. Richie said, on April Fool's Day, they're going to pull the plug. They're going to cut off the internet. They're going to take me in a black car, and you'll never hear from me again. But you can buy my storable food items at richiefromlovestorablefooditems.com. And I'm like, wait, they're going to shut down the internet. So how are they going to deliver the food to my house after you've been taken by the deep state for truthing so hard? So these doomsday profiteers are just grifting. Leon Dion says Regina from Boston. Oh, Regina from Boston is actually Richie's. Is Regina from Austin. And her thing was, I think she was selling jet fuel in order to burn down 5G towers. And she said the jet fuel will cause the 5G tower to melt and fall into its own footprint at free fall speed. It's his cousin from Austin. Bach Precision says the WWE Macho Man voice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Richie from Boston, the chemtrail huffer. He's in his Jeep. The windows are rolled up, and he's just all gravelly about the chemtrails up there. And then he's hitting his vape, and he's puffing. And I'm like, okay, what's worse, hot boxing a Jeep with vape juice 24/7, or the chemtrails 30,000 feet above your head? The first person who tried to convince me to be afraid of chemtrails was smoking Camel Wides. And I looked at the Camel Wides, I looked at the trail, and at the time, I didn't know. So I thought, okay, they're being poisoned, but I guess we're being poisoned here and there. And so what's the big deal? We're all going to die. I became very pessimistic. I believed all the climate change, end of the world, that man was just essentially in self-destruct mode. I believed all that stuff. I almost kind of hoped for it. Like the planet killer asteroid, the zombie movie scenarios. I saw those as I hope this happens. Like, I hope that we have something like this, because for some reason I thought it was somehow justifiable. I think I had a lot of internalized misanthropy. But then I started to unpack how this thing works, and I realized, okay, it's all based on fear, paranoia, insecurity. And eventually I unplugged, where now I don't hate mankind, and I don't think that a planet killer asteroid's a good thing. And I don't even believe in them. I don't believe in nukes. I don't believe in weapons of mass destruction. Girl says, if you own a big freezer with no backup generator, then the prospect of rolling blackouts or brownouts is scary. Yeah, I read this pretty bad book. It's called, I almost shouldn't say it, Contingency Cannibalism, Super Hardcore Survival Tactics. I mean, this book has recipes, but it just describes, what happens if things really go down. Who's going to make it? And who's not going to make it? The people with storable food. Because the looters, the cannibal bandits, are going to come to your house. Your neighbors who know that you have storable food item, when they're starving, they're going to go to your house. So if you're storing anything, you're going to be a target. It even suggested that there is a point where if you recognize it's going this direction, you're better off just forming a band of cannibals. And if anybody is opposed to it, they try to stop you, they come to your house, just consider it free meat delivery. I mean, the book is brutal, and it gives various examples of cannibalism throughout history. I don't know how exaggerated it is, but it makes me think of Alex Jones talking about it. 6 weeks into lockdown, he talked about how he's been staring at his neighbors, thinking about how he's going to string them up and butcher their meat for his daughters. Like, that only took 6 weeks of lockdown. We hadn't even run out of new Netflix to watch, and Jones is already talking about cannibalism. Girl says, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos think they can block the sun. I don't know about that. I mean, this is old, stale, decades old conspiracy claptrap. But the idea of geoengineering is that climate change is so bad, or global warming so bad, that we have to mitigate it. So geoengineering are mostly hypotheticals. Like, if we need to block the sun, we could do stratospheric injection and maybe mitigate climate change. But these are only hypothetical situations that presuppose climate change actually exists. So it's not even a real thing. It's a hypothetical situation that if it were this bad, we would do this. And I don't even believe it. They claim that the day after September the 11th, since all the planes were grounded, that the Earth was a little bit cooler. because the condensation trails were not causing us to trap heat. So that is interesting in itself, because you can see that the long game was eventually the environmentalists are going to say contrails are bad for the climate. So now they're on the same page as the chemtrail people. Like now they're both mad at airplanes and those trails. One group thinks, hey, it's climate changing us. The other group says it's geoengineering us. So it's just notable here that you have wherever you have points of agreement on opposite sides of the political spectrum, if you're on the political horseshoe and you agree with the other side, you just blame them for it. You're mind controlled. Copaesthetic says Tucker Carlson was pushing the sun thing. Yeah, Alex Jones loves chemtrail theory. Tucker Carlson is a survivor of an alien attack. It scratched his back when he was in bed, and he's got scars to prove it. Just like Jim Caviezel has a 14-inch scar for where he got hit by a scourge when he was playing Jesus, and they accidentally hit him. So they got scars to prove it. You can trust Tucker Carlson when he says that Bill Gates is going to block the sun. Oh yeah, that's 100% believable. This blocking the sun stuff is a joke. Look, another thing too, bad billionaires. Elon Musk, he's our savior. And he's going to save free speech. He's going to save us from everything by taking us to Mars. So Elon Musk is a savior if you're on the right. If you're on the left, he's a Nazi. He's the fourth branch of government, and he's going to kill us all. So is he a villain or is he a savior? He's both. Depends on where you are on the spectrum. Bill Gates. Oh, Bill Gates is a depopulationist. He's going to kill us all and he's going to block the sun. But only if you're on the right wing. If you're on the left, he's a savior and he saved mankind. He's a philanthropist. So which is it? Is he a villain or a savior? So you got these billionaire villains who are saviors to the other side. Again, bifurcation. If it's split like that and you're falling into it, you're in their Hegelian dialectic. You're in their rigged game. And if you're in their rigged game, you're a believer. And this, like, look, the pro is the white, the anti is the black. You got to be anti-pro, anti-anti. So why is it that your supervillain is the other person's savior and vice versa? Can they be both? 33 years old says, do you think the chemtrail theory is supported by more evidence than the gang stalking theory? There's no evidence for chemtrails. Look, I will send you $10 PayPal. And right now, that's actually a lot of money for me because everything I get, I invest into this. But I will give you $10 for evidence of a chemtrail. No questions asked. Just show me the evidence and I'll send you the money. And this is in perpetuity. As long as I have this channel, I will pay for chemtrail evidence. Screw it. $20. I'll just give you $20 every time you send me evidence of chemtrails. You can only take advantage of this offer once a week, but I'll pay as many people as can provide me evidence of chemtrails. And I won't be like Dearth, refusing to pay out the prize money when I'm debunked or if I'm debunked. Am I taking callers? Yeah, I'll take callers. Sure. Let's go ahead because we're talking about a lot of different things. Let me make sure I haven't missed anything else. Let me bring this up really quick because we talked about the Q pipes. So Jim Caviezel. Let's talk about Jim Caviezel for a moment. He played Tim Ballard in Sound of Freedom. Tim Ballard, the human trafficker, ironically, a literal human trafficker being charged for it, a groomer, an abuser of women, terrible guy. I think he's been kicked out of the Mormon church, but Tim Ballard claimed to be related to one of the Mormon founders. He was fighting human trafficking or performatively. He was just basically faking it. But anyway, Jim Caviezel, I spell with a Q, Jim Caviezel, but JC, he goes back a little ways. He played Jesus in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. And he told Mel, he said, hey, Mel, my initials are JC and I'm 33. I'm perfect for the role. And Mel Gibson hired him. So he's 33. They record Passion of the Christ. He gets whipped by a scourge. He has a 14-inch scar. He got an injury when a cross fell on him and caused him to bite part of his cheek. And then on the 5th take of Sermon on the Mount, he was struck by lightning and he died. And then he rose from the dead. They resurrected him. He had to get surgery. He's got lung problems, but Jim Caviezel as Jesus was struck by lightning, if you believe all this hype. But then after this, he goes to go film Count of Monte Cristo. So the Count of Monte Cristo is about a character named Edmond Dante, who is falsely imprisoned for 16 years. And he gets out of it. He breaks out of this tomb, this dungeon, at the age of 33. And I found this to be interesting for a few reasons. But the Count of Monte Cristo seems to be the basis for like the masked vigilante with a lot of money, the Batman archetype. But what's more, there's this idea of him going into this underworld and then coming out. Like, you know, and 33, like Jesus in the tomb comes out 33 after he rises from the dead. And I kind of connected this to the Divine Comedy because the main character's name is Dante and he goes to hell and he comes back out. And it's halfway through, it's midway through his life's journey. Most scholars will say 35 because the Bible says 70 is a lifespan. But I don't know, 33, 35, whatever. The point of it is the story of this character going into the underworld and then emerging. And this also ties into the idea of the harrowing, where Christ goes to hell for 3 days and comes out. It's part of the Apocrypha. But this Jim Caviezel character is going to be in the resurrection of the Christ, is why I brought him up. He's going to be in the news again. But I'm just pointing out that JC, 33, Jesus Christ, Count of Monte Cristo, another 33-year-old, what is up with all this? And then you connect to it Mel Gibson, who also is connected to conspiracy theories, also in predictive programming for 9/11 in The Patriot, very specific stuff. And then he's also considered by the QAnoners to be one of theirs. So there's a bit of a QAnon mythology built around Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel. That's interesting. And then the fact that it goes back to all of this meta scripting where you can see how they are attached to a certain archetype. I believe there's a couple of other points about this, but we'll move on from there. But again, there's a new Mel Gibson. Here's the conversation that he had. Mel Gibson had a conversation with Jim Caviezel, and he said he was 33, his initials are JC, and Gibson said, "You're freaking me out." Another point, Tim Ballard claims that one of the trafficked victims gave him one of those, I think it's called a scapula, one of those little Catholic necklace things, and it has a pendant that says Tim or Timothy 611. So Timothy 611 for Tim Ballard. 611, of course, Timothy McVeigh executed 611. Branch Davidian, Waco is where he got motivated to become an extremist. 611 p.m. is when Donald Trump was shot. We've talked about the 611 stuff and how it's infused throughout the right wing. Richie from Boston used to always talk about it. He would say, "Put on the full armor of God," Ephesians 6:11. So 6:11 has been bandied around the right for a long time. So for this latest Jim Caviezel movie, to have 6:11 a part of it is really, I guess, on brand. Let me read through these comments that somebody left on my YouTube channel, and then I'll open up the phones. All right, let's see. Let's go. Said, oh yeah, Tim calling Austin Metcalf. Yeah, I was mispronouncing it. It's Austin Metcalf. And Metcalf, maybe it has some connotations to, I don't know, sacrifice or something. He says, "I'm glad." Okay, yes. There's already a show on Hulu about the Pope. Okay, I've seen the Conclave suddenly advertised like crazy all over Amazon. It looks very boring. Like I should probably watch it and do my homework, but I couldn't get motivated to watch it. Stranger Days says Leo friend sounds just like Calcified Lies, a subdued Calcified Lies. If that's true, it would be awesome. Calcified Lies is a great channel, but I don't think it's the same person. Dwayne Garrett says it's weird how faceless accounts are more popular on the heels of AI channels. There was a big push a few years back to show the content creator's face. Yeah, that's the trend. Faceless channels are replacing everything. A lot of people are taking advantage of AI and getting into content creation, affiliate marketing, and areas that they might have been barred from because they didn't want to appear on camera, but that's no longer a barrier. It's just another area that's changed fundamentally. Let's see what else here. Rocco Calzone says, I heard Shia LaBeouf had a crisis actor school in an LA documentary out or out soon. Okay. Oh, he has an actor school, crisis actor school. Interesting. Haven't heard of that, but we mentioned him the other night. He was in Megalopolis. And he's got the birthday of 6/11, and he was crucified upside down in front of a $100 bill in that movie. And if you understand their symbolism, it all makes sense. Vanden says, the Seattle Supersonics NBA team retired their Space Needle logo in 2001. Dave Polk says, looks like some judge got pinched for harboring illegal gang members in your neck of the woods. That was in Las Cruces. Some judge had some gang member living with him and his wife. Very questionable. Apparently, he had pictures of severed heads on his phone. And look, I'm not a reality denialist. Like, I talk about psyops and hoaxes, but the world exists. Stuff happens. I've seen many examples of these things. I've picked up gang killings when I was a decedent transporter. So, like, I'm not in denial of anything when it comes to what happens in the real world. But there's a distinction between the real world and the worldview as presented by media monolithically. There's a discrepancy. But if you point out the discrepancy, you're called a conspiracy theorist. Okay, I think that was the majority of the comments. Yeah, phones are open if you want to call in. Somebody sent me this. They said, Pope Francis's sister breaks silence after his death. He says, is Pope Francis pulling a prince on us? Is he his sister now? Yeah, if you don't know, there is this rumor, this theory that Prince faked his death and that he came to his own funeral dressed up as his sister. That, in other words, he may not even have a sister, that she was always a character that he was playing. And this whole theory is based on a close resemblance, which you would expect with siblings, but also a very masky quality to the sister. All right, let's see. Steve says, calm down. I'm an LBC2. How can I get in touch with you? Look, again, I think that this is great. I think that you should corroborate. People are like trying to challenge me on this assertion that there's no space station. And what I've been saying is the only way you can convince me is to get two people to record it at the same time. This would be case closed. Like, that would be a game changer. I would have no choice but to concede pretty much everything about space if you had two observers 50 miles apart recording the same thing at the same time on the same pass, because that would mean it wasn't an airplane. It means that it has to have been this particular altitude, 185 miles, to be observed from these two places and have the angle consistent with what it should be. All right. A couple of other things I want to catch up on. Going through my minds.com, I'm keeping my eye on Laura Loomer's character. I made something of a prediction that there's something that's going to correspond with the disposition of her corresponding character in the madness. Steve says, I'm not arguing, man. I just joined and heard you discussing it. Yeah, well, look, it's not a point of contention, but one of the things that distinguishes this think tank from every other think tank or every other conspiracy channel or anything even conspiracy adjacent, what distinguishes us is that we're not here accepting claims with no evidence, which means that as a think tank, we don't believe in unicorns. And if you believe in unicorns, then we have to ask, well, then what is your basis for believing in unicorns? Same thing with Mandela effects. If we let in Mandela affected people into our think tank and don't challenge them, our think tank will no longer be rational. If we say, okay, if you believe in chemtrails, you can still run with us and engage in media fakery deconstruction. Well, no, you can't. Because if you still fall for these logical fallacies, then none of what we say is going to make sense to you. We're going to be debating on everything. We're still going to be debating if there were 9/11 jumpers. And we're past that. And there are enough of us who are past it that we don't lose anything by excluding the people who haven't figured it out. We don't lose anything by excluding the Mandela affected. But if we let the Mandela affected in, we would be outnumbered by irrational people who don't understand why they believe these things and have emotional attachments to these beliefs and see the non-believers as challenges, as enemies even. Like, I'm not your enemy just because you believe that you're being poisoned by the airlines or because you believe that your underwear label has changed and no longer has a cornucopia. Like, these aren't really points of contention, but they highlight the distinction between a rational, reasonable, objectivist think tank and hysteric alternative media reactionaries. And we don't react here. We respond. We accumulate evidence. And the difference between us and Trutherville is we've arrived at conclusions. You say, I don't know if this is poison or not. Well, actually, that kind of statement is loaded. That's what I kind of mean here, is that it was never even a debate, if it was poison. There's never been a case made for it. But this is why we have to fine-tune our arguments. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to fine-tune the think tank as a separate entity from the alternative media. People in alt media don't really think. They react. And why wouldn't they? They believe all this crazy stuff. But what we have done is we have created a separate platform I call Off-World Stage that's not built on the presumption that any of these things are true. And moreover, that by separating from believers, we arrive at a higher quality of information. There's a reason why none of the mainstream or alternative media people have figured out the extent of media fakery or the deliberate and systemic alignment and synchronization between all entertainment and fake news. Entertainment corresponds to the fake news with regularity that cannot be explained as mere coincidence, nor can it be explained by invoking a higher power, AI, or higher than power gods, or whatever people are saying, the simulation. No, this think tank has provided enough information, evidence, and established a model that demonstrates that, yes, there is in fact a deliberate monolithic unity in our mediation for the sole purpose of controlling history, controlling time. And we pointed out day after day, it's systemic fakery. So there's a reason, the only reason I believe that we arrived at this is because we have consistently challenged all of the guardrail issues. Skyfish says, I'm down for ISS collaboration. Well, look, the years are going to pass. You don't have much time. If you are an ISS believer, just like with chemtrails, I will pay $20 for every submission of evidence in support of chemtrail theory, and I'll crowdfund you $500 if you and a friend can record the ISS. $500. But for this to work, it means that you have two of you recording it on the same pass, and you have to be separated by at least 50 miles, and you have to be in the shot. You have to have a selfie with the light in the sky. And I've had people say, well, my phone won't record the light in the sky. Yes, it will. But anyway, the fact that none of you have done it is very telling. Just like none of the chemtrail people have sued the airlines, none of the ISS believers have managed to provide me any evidence. They spend time, believers spend time fighting non-believers. Get rid of the non-believers instead of changing their belief into knowledge, testing their belief. There's a qualitative difference between a knower and a believer. Religious believers kill knowers. They burn them at the stake. They're infidels, apostates. Non-believers are a threat to the integrity of the herd. That's probably why a lot of chemtrail people are threatened by me. That Bobby Johnson guy was very threatened by me. He attacked my character, suggested I was dumb, all kinds of alarmist rhetoric, as though I was endangering the tribe. Like, if we let this guy in and he sows doubt, we're not going to take precautions against this threat to the collective. That's what it comes down to. Beliefs are largely the ones that we discussed here. They're things that you are, I guess, partaking in because of the group you belong to. It's very culty, but it's a collective thing. And non-believers threaten the collective. And alternative media believers and mainstream believers are the same thing. What we are non-believers. And if you're not a non-believer, then you've taken some leap of faith. You've trusted a blue check. You trusted a mediation source that you think is valid, which means that you've outsourced your perception. You've compromised your reality. Well, Steve, when you say, like, I know you're not threatened by me necessarily, but you're challenged, I would say. Oh, yeah, I'll put the StreamYard link. And look, a couple of things too. It's disingenuous to say that you believe in chemtrails, but you're not afraid of them. No, you're afraid of them. You can't tell me that you're not afraid of it. Sorry, but it's scary. How can you tell me that you're not afraid of it? Like, I'm not afraid of these toxins, these chemicals that are killing the plants, wiping out the human population and destroying the earth. No, you're scared of it. I'm not saying you're a coward, but it's like you should have a healthy fear. Like, I have rattlesnakes out in the foothills here, and I would be foolish if I said I wasn't afraid of them. Like, I'm not a coward. I saw one. I took a picture of it. I don't get closer than 6 feet. I mean, they can strike half their body length. You got to stay back, but I'm not going to say, well, I'm not afraid of rattlesnakes. Like, what's the point of that? It's a rational fear. But I'm saying that chemtrail phobia is a paranoia. It's an irrational fear. But if you really believe it's real, it's rational to fear it. So no, don't hold back. Don't hold back. Dwayne Abid says cult mentality reigns supreme. Well, this is the information age, and we shouldn't be outsourcing so much of our information of the world to third parties who have vested interest in selling us on worldviews. Losers Go Pew Pew says, I'm afraid of heights. Good. Look, I'm so afraid of heights that I saw a video of this kid on top of the Empire State Building with the selfie stick standing up there, and he lets go with one hand. And I get vertigo so bad, I'm like dizzy sitting in my chair. And then I find out it was AI. So an AI deep fake, somebody making a fake video of him on top of a building, was enough to like affect my give me a physiological reaction. I was like, wow, this is vertigo. So if chemtrails were real, I would be afraid of them. Absolutely. If you can convince me that they're real, yeah, I'll be terrified. But I'm never paralyzed by fear like chemtrail believers are. They never act on it. Phones are open. What's up, Leo, friend? Welcome to the chat.
Hey, Tim, what's up?
just having another conversation about chemtrails, kicking another dead horse.
Well, I did want to, aside from kicking that dead horse, you had briefly mentioned Austin Metcalf's last name. From the definition from Ancestry.com, it said the Metcalf surname, and I included this in my article about him. It says it means a calf to be fattened up for eating. So that's the etymology of that last name, which is curious, right? And there's so much weirdness surrounding that story. His killer's name matching the famous basketball player Carmelo Anthony with a K instead of a C. And on the same day of the stabbing, the basketball player was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And there's just, his final, Austin Metcalf's final tweet was, if I pull it up right here, his final tweet is just so theatrical. It says, faith that God has got me, heart emoji, and my work will pay off.
Right. And he got stabbed in the heart, right?
Yes. Oh, yes, he did. And he died in his twin brother's arm. And that was the thing I wanted to tell you, why I wanted to call in. I was having this thought about how you were mentioning these world stage characters are heroes to some, and then also villains to heroes to the right, villains to the left, vice versa. That's where I think the twin angle could come in, because I was really thinking about Donald Trump. He is a Gemini from his birthday on the world stage, at least his world stage birthday, and the astrological belief system. He's a Gemini, he's a twin. And I noticed this with my Spike Lee Metascript breakdown. Adam Driver played the character that was kind of a Trump proxy in that film, Black Klansman. And it's like there's two sides of Trump, right? So one side, the left thinks he's like Adolf Hitler, just destroying everything, fascist, whatever. But to the religious right, to the evangelical right, he's actually going to save Israel. There's so many false prophecies I've been studying from these YouTubers that say he's going to rebuild the temple, the third temple in Jerusalem. He's beloved by people who have a false view of the Bible, that the Jewish people, the Jewish ethnic race is like God's chosen people. So he's both a hero and a villain simultaneously.
Okay, this is interesting because Jordan Peele had brought this up. There was a discussion with, and not just him, but the director of that vampire movie Sinners, and that was compared to some of Jordan Peele's work. But they talk about how it dealt with the doppelganger or the double, and this is a consistent theme that has been brought up in these movies. So that movie has Michael B. Jordan playing his own twin, and of course he dies in it. Well, the twin dies holding the other twin, just like the stabbing. But the connection here with that movie and that psyop is the twin thing, the stabbing scene in particular, but also the general context of the race war narrative they've imposed over that particular psyop. But the twin thing was brought up by the director, and Jordan Peele talks about it quite a lot. And it all does relate to the duality expressed in the vampire, who has a nice face, personable, charismatic, but once you invite them in, they suck your blood. The idea of this duality, dual characters, seems to be a repeated theme in these psyops. So, yeah, interesting find there.
It provides the backdrop for the debate that doesn't include media fakery in it. So people are saying Austin Metcalf is a tragic victim of racial violence, and then there are the other side that thinks, no, it was an altercation, and people like him, deserve it. That's what the left is saying. That's why they gave Carmelo Anthony all that money. And the right is saying this is just one example of racial hatred. So these two parallel running narratives where they're both fighting, but none of them will ever examine it being a completely staged event with a crisis actor dad and interacting with other world stage crisis actors like Jake Lang. They'll never get to that perspective because they're too focused on these the twin view of Austin Metcalf, who does literally have a twin, right, in the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And this whole thing seems to be building up towards activism. I'm seeing it on the left and right. The right is saying, this is our Trayvon Martin, white lives matter, we should be marching against this. And the left is saying, if the alleged killer is not let go because it was self-defense, then there's going to be riots. So I've seen calls for an uprising there. And then I was listening to some Daily Beast leftist podcasts, and there's a lot of agitation calling for massive protests. And we're about to hit May Day. That's a couple days from now. Beltane, high point on the pagan calendar, the witches' Sabbaths. This is the high point. It's not Halloween, it's the May Day, the complete opposite side of the year. And this is generally when things heat up. So I'm expecting some kind of leftist uprising, just like from the Madness, extreme Antifa type action. But this thing with Metcalf seems to be the catalyst. They may use this as a catalyst because it works both ways. Just like with Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely, it's all part of the same buildup.
And I find what's amazing is how they legitimize these kinds of psyops by introducing a media blackout. I noticed that was a common talking point among those who support Austin Metcalf and think he's a victim. They're saying, notice our liberal media isn't talking about this at all. That was even in some of the responses of his final tweet. And yeah, that's it's like the censored narrative. Doesn't Alex Jones say, I'm the most censored man on the internet and stuff? It's like you can sprinkle legitimacy onto a psyop or a world stage character by introducing these kind of narratives that it's you can't talk about this is censored, while everyone is also talking about it at the same time.
Now, did you hear what Alex Jones said to Tucker Carlson? Or Tucker Carlson said, I'm going to make a prediction that there's going to be a false flag fighting racism, implying that some BLM type is going to shoot up the Patriot Front. And one of the end scenes in Sinners is the protagonist shoots up the Klan, kills the Grand Dragon. So I'm like, wait a minute here. The movie, which is paralleling this psyop in several ways, ends where they're killing a bunch of, I guess, Klansmen. And of course, what Tucker Carlson was saying is that, there's going to be some false flag that is going to be used to justify censoring free speech, because it will have caused this whole thing to have risen up in the first place. And they suggested Patriot Front. And when I say left-right uprising, someone says LOL. Well, after the Madness, I said, expect a class warfare framed uprising from the left against CEOs, against the rich. And what have we seen? We have seen not just threats against Musk and Trump, the Cybertruck thing against the tower. How many attacks have there been? How many Tesla headquarters have been firebombed? How many cars have been scratched? So when I'm saying that there's a leftist uprising, I'm basing it off of Netflix, the prediction there, and what we have seen. And then you combine this with their own rhetoric and talk and their organizing. And obviously, what was that, 50 protests, that 51 movement? So like, where am I wrong here?
Well, more importantly, it's about the world stage. I don't think you're suggesting there's going to be a literal leftist uprising, just like as I would suggest there would never be a literal or right uprising. That's why I always found the Civil War narrative absolutely ridiculous. What are Americans on their scooters, mobility scooters, going to be getting ready for fighting a civil war in the 21st century? It just seems absolutely ridiculous. But nevertheless, they can still manifest something like that on the screens and generate the reaction as if it had occurred. And that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about here.
Let me add something here, because he says it's not an uprising. Well, maybe you're just getting into semantics here, because we have a movement that has arisen over this idea that it's justifiable to kill a CEO, that he's the oppressor. The class warfare thing has been thrown into it. Luigi's a symbol of this, and this uprising against Musk and Trump. Maybe the word's not uprising, protests, but I mean, the word is accurate as far as it's a political blowback and it's concerted. They had 50 different state capitals with protesters. So uprising means protesters getting in the street, making noise. I'm not saying insurrection, but what I'm saying is that no, it has been consistent. If you're saying there isn't leftist activist activity and hasn't been for months now, then you haven't been paying attention. I've been following this stuff very closely. And right now there are organizers right now preparing, because they see this as the weakest point in the encroaching autocracy. And if they don't put Trump and the administration in its place now, it's not going to happen. So this is just leftist rhetoric, and it's consistent with what we're seeing in all of the predictive programming, and it's nuanced. I mean, this is not like broad strokes.
Yeah, and you brought up Sinners. That movie is very much tailored for more leftist views, right? It literally paints the the white race as vampires, right? But concurrently released, The Monkey, I saw that kind of as a right-wing coded film. It's not overtly right-wing, but it does have a bit of subconscious racial agitation, because the story of it is that when you wind up that cursed monkey toy, it causes a stochastic violent death to just someone, right? And the dad, the main character, his son is adopted. Like his wife divorces him, and she marries Elijah Wood, and Elijah Wood is seen as just this absolutely annoying guy. And he published books on Christianity, like Jesus's dad. And there's this subtle like cucking narrative, like he's letting his son go with him. And it's fascinating that in the Austin Metcalf story, there was a serious discussion about people questioning the legitimacy of Christianity, because the dad, being Christian, immediately forgave. He's like, I forgive Carmelo Anthony. If anything, I feel sympathy for what he did for killing my son. Right? Like, what? It's just
Right.
It's very bizarre.
Jake Lang highlighted this. Jake Lang called him weak, and so I saw this story emerging, and then I realized, wait, Jake Lang is a major January 6er. So he's a Fed. He's an actor. So now you got a provocateur, a Fed, an actor, one of the leading January 6th insurrectionists. Now he's the face of the PSYOP regarding Austin Metcalf as it's being sold to the right wing. Like, hey, look, you should be outraged about this death. Let this be your martyr. Let Austin be your Trayvon Martin and rise up. And so this instigator being connected to J6 tells you that the whole thing is fake. And so given that, now its connections with that movie are even more relevant.
And it's Caucasian twins that are the main characters of that movie, Hal and I forgot the other guy's name, right? And just like in Sinners, his twin brother doesn't die in his arms, but he dies in front of him. And there are these swords that fall down in this elaborate, like Rube Goldberg trap machine thing that leads to a cannonball getting shot in his face. But before, it shows these swords very clearly, quickly spliced and falling down, and then he gets shot. And he dies right in front of him, right? So we have two movies, okay, about twins where their other half dies in front of them, running parallel to this highly racially motivated psyop, where a twin died in the arms of their other twin brother. Yeah, it's just consistent.
Okay, so Jordan Peele talks about the twins, the double, the doppelganger. It's a recurring theme in all his movies. He said Nope was inspired by the George Floyd spectacle. And what was the main thing about the George Floyd thing? Twins. Twin cities. His twin, Steven Jackson, was center stage at the very beginning. And then there are numerous connections between that Twin Cities event and the Twin Tower event. When you get into the symbolism of Twin Towers being hit at 8:46, George Floyd, Twin Cities being kneeled on for 8:46, the sun set on that day, which is Memorial Day 2020, in the Twin Cities at 8:46. So the twin theme was a huge part of that as well. And this is a big part of Jordan Peele's work, from Nope to Get Out. So there's, again, it's matching what we're seeing on the world stage. This
and
twin
most
theme.
and most importantly, in real events, in real altercations or real scuffles, right? Like these kinds of alignments aren't there. So it's kind of ridiculous when people claim, oh, you just call everything fake. It's like, no, you think these stories are everything. That's the like that's the way they need to really understand. It's like we're not saying all news is fake, just the big ones that you are so emotionally invested in. Those are fake, but that doesn't mean that's everything. So whenever I hear someone say you just call everything fake, I'm like, man, you're starting to think all these scary stories you're being told by the news are everything.
Yeah, I can't even get that far with people. I don't even try, but I don't have anybody in my personal life that even watches the news. Like they literally are just default believers in mainstream. And that's how it works. Mainstream mediation requires zero effort. They're low information believers. And low information belief is not as heavy as informed disbelief, which is all I advocate. Informed disbelief. I don't believe in chemtrails because I'm informed about condensation trails. Whereas you believe in chemtrails, chemtrail believers, because you have very little information. And for you, it's a question. Now, it's not a valid question, but you're a low information believer. You believe it for very little reasons. And that's the mainstreamer. So mainstream belief is very shallow by design, low effort.
Well, I think an important point is that even if you don't watch the news, these narratives do like percolate through social media and other avenues. And to be clear, so everyone's wondering, I do not talk about this kind of stuff in meat space. This is only in cyberspace with my online friends. It's pretty funny. I've even thought about this concept that we're all twins in a way, that our online self, our online activity can be may perhaps discuss things that you wouldn't discuss in real life. And I think what we're headed towards with the Disease X isn't necessarily censorship of the internet. Well, I'll explain in a moment. It's leading for a total unity of all activity will be identified to who you are, a biometric association with your IP address. So basically, you notice this right now with like Amazon and other places. They're always encouraging, oh, you should generate a cryptographic biofingerprint so that you don't need to type a password. Just do this. And the reason for that is then the activity that is generated from that account will be guaranteed to be coming from this real life person. And I don't know if you know this, Tim, but free speech is deeply tied to anonymity. They are one in the same. Without anonymity, there is no such thing as free speech. That's like the Federalist Papers were published anonymously. I don't know if you know that. And yes, it can be abused. Yes, it does have problems, like I'm aware. But that's really, I think, where it's headed towards. It's like, once this horrible calamity, whether it be a right-wing terrorist attack or some kind of domestic event, that I think will usher in, a new internet where you have to be re-identified by who you are in real life.
That wouldn't bother me. Honestly, it would not, because there are so many anonymous people out there who make the internet terrible. All the spammers, all these disingenuous types. I mean, this channel, we're the ones who doxed one of the main Q droppers in the whole Q thing. Their power comes from being anonymous and misrepresenting themselves. I just want transparency. So I'm totally fine with people being accountable for what they say. And if you don't want to give up your name, you don't have to be anonymous. Be pseudo-anonymous. Get a pseudonym. Same thing.
Well, that's what I'm explaining, is that, like, I think in the future, to be able to participate in big sites, I don't believe this is going to be like the entire internet, but I do know one of the reasons why my YouTube channel was banned is because I never verified. And they said, like, you can verify by scanning your government ID or by sending a video with your smartphone of your face and stuff. And I was like, no, I'm never going to do that. I had my YouTube account for 17 years. Okay, 17 years, and it never, right? But it got banned because it claimed my channel was spam and deceptive practices. And I was like, what? So this is, I think, what we're headed towards with the, you'll have freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. So to be able to get on these big platforms or whatever it is in the future, they will self-enforce verification, biometric verification. And yeah, I get that anonymity certainly enables spammers, anonymous trolls, all these things, but it is like, it's just necessary. It's one of the aspects of the internet. And I really think that's what will be the end product of Disease X.
Could be. I've always found that, like, I differ on this in that I think the anonymous thing is a way to be unaccountable, and I'm all for accountability. And I think that the anonymous thing is maybe in some places, but I don't know, maybe it's a concern. I just don't have any illusion that anything we're doing is really anonymous or private. I mean, we recently learned that Netflix had access to all of our Facebook DMs and our browser history. So I don't operate under the presumption that there is any privacy anymore.
Well, I think you should, because I can speak about this from, I guess a perspective of some authority, that I'll tell you that's actually a psyop. The Edward Snowden character and that entire psyop, which had an Oliver Stone film, by the way, made about it, it is exactly that. It's a psyop to scare people into thinking the government knows more about you than they actually do. I want you to know, in the new era we live in, data is more valuable than money, especially in the machine learning future that we're headed towards. And your personal information is valuable. Okay, do not give that. And corporations, these individual companies, they're very stingy with their data, right? They will only participate if they get a subpoena or if they have to legally hand over the data. They don't just give it over. And I'm sure with the Facebook Netflix example, I'm sure that was a massive purchase on Netflix part. Like they must have, and you know that companies like Google, Facebook, Meta, and some of Microsoft services, these are data companies, right? So they make their money through selling data. And in that sense, yeah, but if you never provide real information, then they're selling garbage data. But so many people have been tricked into voluntarily giving that information. And I do not want to merge with the screen. I have a meat space life where I do stuff in real life, and I have like a cyberspace life where I just, entertain and discuss ideas that I wouldn't normally entertain in, a social space in real life, because free association is a lot easier in cyberspace when you're anonymous.
You don't want a potential employer to look at your Twitter feed. Like that's understandable. And yeah, people need to safeguard their privacy for those reasons, and also stalkers. I would advise people never to hype up their birthday, like, oh, it's my birthday, and tweet about it, because I know from experience that information can open up all kinds of stuff, because I've been a stalker myself. I've had stalkers, and the way I deal with them is I find out everything about them, and the smallest minutia, little detail that you didn't think means anything, can actually open up a lot of stuff. One person, for example, the Q person we talk about, he hides himself online for years. He was completely anonymous. You know what gave him away? His mom's Facebook account. So it's like you could hide behind all these things. You can be a bunker. You can be off the ground. You're totally hidden. But then somebody in your family said something to you and you responded to it or you liked it. And now your whole thing's unraveled. And I've had that happen many times. That's what I mean, that privacy is kind of ephemeral. It's kind of impossible today. Chances are we've already put all the clues out there to be found by anybody.
Especially now with these, models that are dedicated to parsing huge volumes of web pages by compressing it into a vectorized representation. They'll be able to search it more efficiently. That I agree. But if someone perhaps I feel like the younger generation has been groomed or taught to, you know what, everything's already out there. Just put all your information. Who cares, right? I'm like, no, that's valuable information. It's valuable data. At the bare minimum, if you don't care about, who you really are, if people know, at least don't give that to corporations, right? So you can have your entire browsing history, but it's associated with meme lord 420, right? That's fine. But when you start then liking your university or your family's tweets and stuff, now you're making that web that it can be associated. But it's good OPSEC, right? I get that. And that's where I really think that the final merging of the offline and the online will be this persistent biometric ID. That's where I see it heading. And I know that you are like, who cares? I don't know. I feel like I come from an older era of the internet where I remember the trends. I guess from my age range, I remember early internet where it's like, never use your real name online, never do that. And then slowly within my lifetime, people are like, oh, post everything on Facebook. It's like, it just happened over time. And now people have had screenshots of YouTube signing up and they say, do not use your real name. And then once it was acquired by Google, it was like, please give us your real name, your phone number and all this stuff. And they're combating spam, right?
We are in a total self-surveillance society. It's like 1984, but voluntarily. Orwell did not predict this.
Yeah, that's the main thing, because even the trying to find out who someone is, it comes from publicly available information that was posted online. That's why it's like you see these big leaks and stuff. And it's like these were either the other end of a DM, meaning the other person leaked it, or it was publicly posted, right? Hacking required, right? So a lot of the information is just already out there, but if you're careful about it to know, and I think we're heading to a time where they're going to want that persistent matching, because it's very useful for employers, for government and everything, if you could just type in someone's name and have everything about them, and not have a separate version of yourself that's partitioned. But that's a big discussion, so sorry, I don't want to keep your show going for so long.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's an interesting take on it. At this point, yeah, I think it's I think it's over. I think privacy has been, culturally, we've moved away from this idea of privacy to where now everything is commodified, made public. The idea of keeping stuff from the public, having a private life, is kind of like archaic now. And you're right, it's a cultural thing. They've shifted it. And
Can I say,
yeah, like you can sell your private life, reality TV. Like people will pay to see what's generally private.
can I say one other thing I just remembered about this movement towards total union with the screen by biometric verification? I think AI will play a huge role in that narrative because as multimodal generative AI is coming about, if you have all this publicly accessible data, like pictures or videos of someone, their voice, these streams, by the way, could easily be scraped and be used to generate a bot that speaks exactly like you or me. In the future, they will then say, you don't know if you're talking to a real person. So we need a universal authentication, biometric authentication that this message was posted by a person, not an AI pretending to be them.
Well, you still do have all the legal protections against impersonation and against the use of your image and likeness for commerce, for publicity that is not with your authorization. You still do have all the essentially trademark protections that are there. But it is true. There are people I know. In fact, there's this one channel that I follow. She's a psychiatrist. And at one point I noticed, wait a minute, sometimes she looks a little fake. And what I realized is some of her content is AI generated based on her voice and her likeness, and it is her content, but it's almost indistinguishable from her own videos. So she could pretty much continue the same age and never change and just put out videos into perpetuity without ever having to get in front of the camera ever again. And then I've also found people will scrape the content from specialized topics and then recreate it as a faceless channel and have it reworded by ChatGPT. So I can see content theft is huge and it's monetizable and it's a business model for some people. There are people who will look for a niche that's generating traffic and they will literally use AI and say, recreate this, but make it a little bit different. And then they will reproduce it with a faceless channel and there's nothing that can be done. Like somebody could scrape and farm this content and reproduce it better than me and outcompete me. I mean, maybe not this because it's kind of specialized, but in general, yes, this is a thing. It's already happening and it's only getting better.
And that's the main thing about voluntary, what's it called? I'm looking for voluntary participation in such a system is that I don't believe there's going to be any law requiring people to do biometric authentication. It'll be through the narratives, through these psyops, like maybe the future terrorist attack, maybe it'll be able to be executed because of a malicious use of AI or something like that, right? So people will naturally, of their own accord, be doing it. We noticed this with the poke, right? There was never any law passed. It was a mandate, which is gratuitously observed. And the people voluntarily got it, and their companies voluntarily fired them. And so there was no law. There's no law about it. And that's kind of how I see it playing out. And I don't want to give, someone in chat was saying, we're here for hope, not fear porn. I don't want to scare people because like that was a hypothetical. I don't think anyone's actually going to, scrape this channel or my voice to do these things. Neither of us are, right? We're in that third position, right? We're like the unacknowledged. I don't think anyone would, but I think in the future, it's like
right. And some people are flattered. Some people get flattered. Sorry, I think you just got cut off there a little bit. We're having a little
connections, yeah.
A bit of a buffering, more gloom, sure, and how things are changing in front of our eyes, and it's a rapid process, and it's actually seemingly exponential. Some of these AI applications are just mind-blowing what they can do.
Yeah, that's something Ray Kurzweil said is that people have trouble comprehending the exponential aspect. It will get better so much faster than anyone can realize. And I'm not here to scare you because there's so many useful applications like this, like audiobook readings from just mining someone's voice, and then you could have it read it in your voice. And all. Yeah, there's a lot of positive, useful things for these things. But I'm just saying our world stage handlers will use the negative aspects to generate psyops to have people with their own accord self-enforce their usage of it.
Did you see that article I posted about how the University of Zurich did this study with a bunch of AI bots they deployed, and they found that bots are 6 times more persuasive than real people in changing people's opinions?
Yes, and it's not surprising at all to me. Data is, like I said, data is the new currency. knowledge is power, but whoever coined that phrase, I don't think they thought about the data-driven society we'd be in now. And yeah, I always repeat that to people. Data is the new oil. Like it's absolutely, it may not be fiat currency, but it's very valuable. So always consider that, just to stick it to the man. Like I don't ever I just don't like using my real information. It wouldn't be the end of the world if someone revealed who I really was, but because no one even cares about me. But I just don't like to do it out there. And I know in the future moving forward, that means I will have an even smaller voice. Like I already had a non-existent voice, but I'll have no voice unless I fully synthesize with my real life person online.
Yeah, the new internet's going to be for the Neuralinked only. If you don't get the implant, you're not getting on board.
Well, I think the Neuralink thing is total. That's another example of fake. Like I saw Elon Musk's Neuralink conferences, and I thought that was such garbage. Right? He had audience plant members and the EEG data that was showing for the monkeys. I was like, what? There's just so much. It's one of the noisiest data types. I don't know if you know EEG data. So anyway, that.
By the way, when they were showing some articles about this, they said that Musk's company was killing monkeys. That's exactly the story in 28 Days Later. It's all about the.
Yep.
And I saw a trailer for 28 Years Later, by the way. And, there's a trailer for something else called The Thunderbolts, some Marvel comic universe production that's coming out soon. And the opening scene in the trailer was a bunch of stuff falling from the sky. So space junk Armageddon seems to be indicated by that. But I saw the 28 Years Later one, a zombie movie. So the timing of it's just interesting anyway. But yeah, the theme of it was that they are infecting us with mind viruses that cause us to be violent, but that they were abusing monkeys. And then the Elon Musk thing ties into this neatly, and it correlates with his disease X, how Twitter X has become a conduit for all the mind viruses that are going to turn people into the rage monkeys.
There's actually a still from 28 Days Later where a monkey is seated with the wires hooked up in the back of its head looking at a screen. And I took a screen cap of that and then put it next to the Neuralink demo. And I was like, you see, that means it's fake. I was like, that means the Neuralink demo is fake. I think that's a heuristic more people should adopt. For example, even the chemtrails thing, like Snowpiercer, that's the plot of Snowpiercer, is that they did too much geoengineering aerosol spraying, and that's what caused an ice age. So I'm like, okay, that means that's fake.
Yeah, that's the alt eschatology. You got the mainstream eschatology of climate change. Alt eschatology is stratospheric aerosol injections. Bill Gates blocks the sun.
For sure. But anyway, yeah, thanks for taking my call, and bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you very much for the call. Everyone, that's Leo Friend. You can get his articles at mindwar.page. Mindwar.page. But my experience with AI is largely around e-commerce. I took a bunch of tutorials. I was binge watching, just looking into the different possibilities, what could be done. And I have noted that there's a tendency in Trutherville to look at AI as a threat, potentially a demon, or something that's going to take over in some bad way. And I looked into it, and the more I look into it, the more it's demystified, but the more I'm looking at it as significantly transformative, but in a good way, a major leveling of the playing field. But the unintended consequences, the unexpected things are some of the more interesting, like how people are indeed able to create content by theft, but it's untraceable. Remixing people's content, no attribution, having it rewritten. It's essentially plagiarism. But on the bright side, because I've been thinking this could be a problem when it comes to let's say Kindle, Amazon's ebook company, a lot of people who aren't even writers can just go to AI and say, hey, this is a book that I like. Can you give me a similar structure and rewrite it? So they're making their own books. They're getting their covers made with AI, ChatGPT, and they're publishing them. And they're being told by people on YouTube, yeah, create books with AI and publish them and get rich. The thing with this is that Amazon's quality control is already filtering out generic AI created content. If you create that stuff, your channel is associated with spam, it's not promoted, and their algorithm favors original content. So originality will have a competitive advantage, a far more competitive advantage than all of this slick generic stuff. And readers know the difference. And readers are the ones buying books. Challenger Hoax says, who the hell is buying books? I hear that a lot. Amazon Kindle is growing 16% a year or more. It's a $29 billion industry. It's growing exponentially. There are more readers than ever before. More digital pages are read now every day than paper. So yeah, everybody's reading. Well, maybe not you, but it's growing, and a lot of it's not just fiction. I mean, nonfiction is actually kind of, I think, more popular. I'm not sure specifically the stats, but a lot of what sells are nonfiction, information products. But yeah, I do make AI books. Somebody asked me, Norbu says, why aren't you making AI books? I do. I've done a few, and it doesn't really write for you unless you're trying to create generic stuff. But what it can do is that it can serve as an editor. So you could write 50,000 words on a subject or even fiction, and you just give it to Grok and say, Grok, review this. Tell me what needs to be improved. What are the flaws? Where am I inconsistent? And do I have any other weaknesses? And it will give you a breakdown that you'd have to pay a professional editor to do. And there'd be a lot of time involved because they'd have to read it to give you a critique. But you can do it with Grok. So AI is useful if you're writing in general. Does it write for you? Yeah, it kind of can, but you have to proofread it. It has it has flaws here and there, but as long as you take the content that it gives you and you feed it back and ask it to review it, you can make it work. But is it bereft of creativity? Well, no, there still has to be the ideas. So it's not really writing for you 100%, although it's almost there and it's going to get there. It's inevitable. But will it be good is the final question. I've tried it. Like I said, it has limitations, but it's kind of useless talking about them. It's like, well, it can only do this many chapters at a time before it starts becoming a word salad or it becomes too repetitive. But these are bugs that are being worked out all the time. One of the uses I found for it is I take an old manuscript and I ask it, what would you do to improve it? You could even take something you've written. Maybe you write a journal. Like, I went here today. I did this today. You take that journal, give it to the AI and say, hey, rewrite it from a different perspective. A third person narrative, or whatever you want to do. But it still does require creativity. You can create the facsimile of a book. It'll put the words in there. It'll be structured, but will it be aesthetic? Are we at the point where people can't tell? All right. I think I've covered most of our notes here. I think the main point, though, tonight was from that Reddit article, the fact that they've deployed bots to change people's opinions, because we're often talking about influence agents, controlled opposition, who are just there spamming the same bad ideas to keep people on the same sheet. Well, that's been automated. And I've done it myself. I have a bot. One of my bots just got banned off of Twitter. They flagged it for terms of service violations, but it had a good run. And I was actually breaking the rules. I was going to see how far can this go. And the way it worked was anytime somebody mentioned chemtrails in hashtags, my bot would go respond. And then it would follow 10 of their followers and then 3 days later unfollow. But it had this process I'd set up to essentially counteract spam with good information and try to lead them to my site. That's kind of what I see going on anyway. That's kind of the game here, where I think they're realizing, I think the PSYOP entertainment complex can get rid of human agents. They can get rid of human crisis actors and just replace it with CGI. Vanden says, Cillian Murphy is in 28 Days Later and the next two films, and he was in Batman, Dark Knight, and Oppenheimer. Okay, I'll have to look into that particular character. The directors of these films, the Nolans, are significant content producers for the PSYOP Entertainment Complex. Jungle Jim says, like the video. Appreciate that. And if you want the archives, go to ips.monster. And at ips.monster, you'll get archives, you'll get newsletters and live stream notifications. And let me see if I can find the website, autohoax.com. I want to get a count right now. So right now we have 150 people in the video chat. And that's just YouTube, Odyssey, and Twitter. And then let me take us on over to autohoax.com, which is the hoax report. And the hoax report is like the Drudge report for the off-world stage. And if you create content from this perspective, media deconstruction, send me a message. Email me at timosmond007@gmail.com, and I will take your blog or your YouTube feed, and I'll put it on the hoax report. It's all dynamic content. So we have 37 people listening at Conspiratainment Radio, at Radio King, TuneIn, and also at the bottom of the page, because right here it's a list of anybody creating content in this field. But at the very bottom, you can find our PSYOP trading cards. And I've added a few more. You want to take a look at those. My intention is to have 20 completed by the end of the month. So I'll post the rest of them probably tomorrow. So let's see what we have here. If you go to autohoax.com, the hoax report, again, you have the live link to listen here or also at the Fakeologist show. We have forum posts. Does predictive programming exist? Elite gender inversion. That's from Fakeologist. They seem to focus on that quite a bit. Here's a link to Jaron on THC. And I believe that's provided by johnlebon.com. It's all relevant. It's all timely. So if you go to autohoax.com, you can find all of the latest content from people in our side of things. I'm just going through. Here's some links from the caller. Leo called in. Prophets of Baal. Foreshadowing, not prophecy. That's good. I haven't read this one. Foreshadowing, not prophecy. The Hollywood directors are propagandists, not prophets. He says, if you've ever wondered why fictional movies, books, music, video games often foretell future news and cultural shifts in subtle and uncanny ways, you've come to the right place. Most will simply write it off as eerie coincidence. The more conspiratorial-minded will call it revelation of the method. Neither is valid, as both fail to account for media fakery and the mind war we've all been drafted into. That's a great intro to the concept of the world stage and how both sides are wrong. All right, this has been great. I'm going to go ahead and share a link to this below. It's mindwar.page. If you haven't been there, I just found the link through autohoax.com. So like I said, the hoax report is a hub. You go there, anybody who's anyone in this arena, off-world stage, they're going to be featured there. And if you're not featured there yet, you should be. A Bach Precision, for example, I'll have to get your YouTube channel, and I'll just drop that RSS feed onto the hoax report. Because what we're trying to do is build a coalition. We want to create a ecosystem of media skeptics that's separate from everything else. And once we have that, we can scale up. But we have to maintain purity. That's why I call out the Mandela affected and the chemtrail affected, because we have to filter out the bad methodologies, the bad models. It's not about saying that we're right and your beliefs are wrong. It's about we don't want believers. Find out what you know and separate that from what you merely can assert to believe with bad reasons. But quality control is a huge part of what we're doing here, because the mind war is, I think, really predicated on maintaining a status quo of cognitive dissonance and confusion. And I'm not confused. I have to reiterate this. I am not confused. Sometimes there are people who say, well, I don't know. Maybe some people did die we'll never know. I wasn't there. It's like, well, okay, well then you're conceding that your mind cannot arrive at the truth, that your mind is inadequate to the task. And I don't accept that. I think reasonable people arrive at reasonable conclusions, and that's exactly what we have done. We have filtered out the fallacious rabbit trails that lead people to believe a bunch of alternative propaganda. Nick Fingar says, I just emailed you a NASA style patch. Okay, excellent. I'm going to get that made as a patch. I have a printer. If you think I should, I'll do it. I'll send you one. Thank you very much, everyone, for the support, by the way. Charles, appreciate it so much. Could not be fully committed to this if I didn't have a fully committed think tank. And I am doubling down on this. For a few months, I kind of veered into art and moving trash and other things I still do on the side, but I really think that this should be my exclusive focus, and it is. And I've been working on what I call the accelerationism, auto hoax accelerationism. And this is going to be facilitated with AI, among other things. But a lot of it revolves around this hub. So the think tank is a hub in itself, but the hoax report, get everybody on the same sheet, build a coalition. And some people are on the fence because they're stuck in Trutherville, they're stuck in Normieville, but they're not open to the idea that they're being lied to on this bigger scale, and they can stay in their boxes. They can keep missing the forest for the trees, but we can't be held back by that. I mean, we have plenty of evidence, and we're building more and more, and the conclusions that we've arrived at have been vindicated time and again. So thanks for the comments and calls. This is Auto Hoax, or GTFO. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow.
Storm.